The helicopter came in low and fast, rotors screaming through the midnight storm over St. Vincent's Medical Center in Denver. Inside the ER, no one paid attention to Sarah Mitchell, the quiet night nurse they called Broken, the one with the limp and the 1,000-yard stare. Then armed men in tactical gear kicked through the doors carrying a dying operator, and the arrogant trauma surgeon froze. Sarah stepped forward, her hands suddenly steady, her voice cold as steel. The soldiers recognized her instantly, not as a nurse, as someone who'd kept men alive in hell. Dr. Marcus Webb was about to learn what happens when you underestimate a warrior. Before we dive in, I need you to do something for me. Stay with this story until the very end, because what happens next will blow your mind. And when you get there, hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far Sarah's story travels across the world. The fluorescent lights in the emergency department buzzed with their usual sickly hum, casting everything in that washed-out institutional glow that made everyone look half dead. Sarah Mitchell moved through the chaos like a ghost, her pale green scrubs hanging loose on her thin frame, dark circles carved deep beneath her eyes. She'd been on shift for 11 hours. Her right leg ached, always did after hour 8, but she kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering things she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. "Mitchell!" Dr. Marcus Webb's voice cut through the noise like a blade. He stood near the central nurses' station, all 6'3" of him, perfectly pressed white coat, salt and pepper hair that made him look distinguished in that way that opened doors and impressed hospital boards. He held a patient chart like it was evidence in a trial. "Yeah?" Sarah limped over, already knowing this wouldn't be pleasant. It never was with Webb. "Mrs. Patterson in Bay 4. He didn't look up from the chart. "You documented that you expressed concern about potential cardiac involvement." "I did." "Based on what clinical expertise?" Now he looked at her, and his expression carried that particular brand of condescension she'd come to recognize in this place. "You took her vitals and decided to play doctor?" Sarah kept her voice level. Her pain presentation was inconsistent with the initial gastritis diagnosis. Radiating discomfort, diaphoresis, nausea. She had heartburn. Webb snapped the chart shut. "Which I correctly identified and treated. Your job is to follow orders, not to diagnose conditions you're not qualified to recognize." A couple of residents had stopped nearby, pretending to review their own charts while they watched the show. This was entertainment for them, Webb putting the weird quiet nurse in her place. Again. "I documented my observations," Sarah said. "That's within my scope. Your scope is taking blood pressure and emptying bedpans." Webb stepped closer, lowering his voice to that dangerous register he used when he wanted to cut deep. "I don't know what happened to you before you came here, and frankly, I don't care. But this isn't the military, Mitchell. This is a civilian hospital where credentials actually matter. You want to make clinical decisions? Go to medical school. Until then, stay in your lane." He walked away before she could respond. Not that she would have. Sarah had learned a long time ago that some battles weren't worth fighting. You saved your ammunition for when it actually mattered. She turned back toward the supply room, ignoring the stares, ignoring the whispers that followed her everywhere in this place. The limp was worse tonight. Her leg always betrayed her when she was tired, that jagged scar tissue pulling wrong beneath her scrub pants, a souvenir from a roadside bomb outside Kandahar that had killed 3 people and left her with damage no surgery could completely fix. "Sarah," she stopped, turned. Jennifer Orozco stood there, one of the ER nurses who'd actually been decent to her. Younger, maybe 26, with kind eyes and the sort of optimism that hadn't been beaten out of her yet. "Don't let him get to you," Jennifer said quietly. "He's like that with everyone." "I'm fine." "You're not. Nobody is after he pulls that crap." Jennifer glanced toward where Webb had disappeared into Trauma Bay 2. "For what it's worth, I think you were right about Mrs. Patterson. Her EKG had some weird artifacts." Sarah nodded but didn't say anything else. Jennifer meant well, but sympathy didn't change reality. This was how it worked here. Webb was the golden boy, the surgeon who brought in money and had the ear of hospital administration. She was the damaged night nurse who'd washed up in Denver after 3 years of trying and failing to find somewhere she belonged after discharge. The radio on her hip crackled. "All available staff to the ER entrance. We have incoming trauma, ETA, 2 minutes." Sarah moved automatically, the announcement cutting through the fog of exhaustion. Incoming trauma meant all hands on deck, personal grievances suspended until the bleeding stopped. She reached the ambulance bay just as the first paramedics burst through the doors, but something was wrong with the picture. These weren't normal EMTs. The man pushing the gurney wore tactical pants and a shirt with no insignia, his face hard and expressionless. Behind him, two more men in similar clothing moved with that particular efficiency Sarah recognized instantly. Military. GSW to the upper chest, the first man reported, his voice flat and professional. Penetrating trauma, suspected hemothorax, BP dropping, respiratory distress increasing. He's been coded twice in the field. The patient on the gurney was maybe 35, powerfully built, his tactical vest cut away to reveal blood-soaked bandages across his torso. His breathing came in shallow, rapid gasps. Webb appeared from somewhere, his demeanor shifting instantly into command mode. "Get him to Trauma 1. Move!" They wheeled the gurney through the double doors into the trauma bay, and that's when Sarah noticed the others. 6 more men, all dressed similarly, all carrying themselves with that coiled readiness that marked special operations personnel. They followed the gurney like wolves tracking wounded prey, and none of them looked like they were leaving anytime soon. Inside Trauma 1, organized chaos erupted. Nurses swarmed the patient, cutting away the rest of his clothing, establishing IV access, hanging blood products. Webb positioned himself at the head of the table, barking orders with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. "Get me a chest X-ray stat. I want blood gas, complete panel, type and cross for 6 units. Someone get me an airway kit." Sarah worked automatically, her hands moving through the familiar routine of trauma response. Start a second IV line, draw labs, prep the crash cart. Her body remembered this even when her mind tried to shy away from it. The patient's breathing got worse. His oxygen saturation dropped. 86%, 82%. "He's decompensating," one of the residents said, voice tight. Webb grabbed the intubation supplies. "I'm going to secure his airway. Get ready to bag him." Sarah watched the monitors, watched the patient's chest rise and fall in that wrong asymmetric pattern she'd seen before. Something cold settled in her stomach. "Doctor." Her voice came out quiet. Webb didn't acknowledge her. "Dr. Webb." "Not now, Mitchell. I'm working." The patient's sat dropped to 78%. His skin had taken on a grayish cast. The monitor alarm screamed. Sarah moved closer, her eyes on the patient's neck. Distended jugular veins. Tracheal deviation to the left. Decreased breath sounds on the right side. She knew what this was. Had seen it before in a truck outside Jalalabad when Jackson took shrapnel to the chest, and they had 4 minutes to fix it or watch him die. "He has tension pneumothorax," Sarah said, louder this time. "The air pressure is collapsing his—" "I said not now," Webb snapped without looking at her. "Get the intubation tray ready. If you intubate him right now, you'll kill him." The trauma bay went silent. Everyone stopped moving, stopped breathing. Webb slowly turned to look at her, his face darkening with rage. "Excuse me?" Sarah didn't flinch. Couldn't afford to. "He needs immediate needle decompression. The pressure in his chest is crushing his heart and lungs. Intubation will make it worse." "That is not your call to make." Webb's voice dropped to something dangerous. "You are a nurse. I am a trauma surgeon with 15 years of experience. Now get out of my way before I have security remove you from this hospital permanently." One of the military men stepped forward. He was older than the others, maybe 40, with scars visible on his forearms and eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. His gaze moved from Webb to Sarah and back again. "What's the holdup?" His voice carried absolute authority. "No holdup," Webb said quickly, turning back to the patient. "Just dealing with staff who don't understand their role." The monitor alarm got louder. Oxygen saturation hit 74%. The patient's lips were turning blue. Sarah looked at the military operator, held his gaze. "Your man has tension pneumothorax. He needs needle decompression in the next 60 seconds, or he's going to arrest." The operator studied her for a long moment. Something shifted in his expression. Recognition, maybe, or just the acknowledgement of someone who knew what they were talking about. "Do it," he said. Webb spun around. "You can't authorize medical procedures in my ER?" I just did. The operator's hand moved to his hip where a sidearm was holstered beneath his shirt. Not a threat, exactly. Just a reminder. Now either fix him or get out of the way. Webb's face went red, but he stepped back. His jaw clenched so tight Sarah could hear his teeth grinding. She grabbed a 14-gauge needle from the supply tray, her hands completely steady now. The tremor that usually lived in her fingers was gone. Everything that made her seem weak and broken and damaged, all of it disappeared like smoke. This was what she was, had always been. She positioned herself at the patient's right side, found the anatomical landmarks by touch. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line. She'd done this in the dark, done it under fire, done it while bleeding from her own wounds. The needle went in smooth and deep. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, hiss! Trapped air exploded out under pressure, and the patient gasped, his chest suddenly expanding properly. The monitor alarm changed pitch. Oxygen saturation climbed. 78, 82, 87. His color improved immediately. Sarah pulled the needle, already moving to the next step. I need a chest tube kit. Now. Nurses scrambled to comply. Webb stood frozen, his expression caught somewhere between shock and fury. The older operator stepped closer to Sarah, his eyes on her hands as she worked. Professional. Efficient. No wasted movement. Where'd you learn that? He asked quietly. Somewhere else. Sarah didn't look up, focused on prepping the chest tube insertion site. Long time ago. That's an understatement, Corporal Mitchell. She stopped, looked up at him. He was smiling now, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was recognition. Yeah, he said. I know who you are. Took me a minute, but I figured it out. You were attached to 3rd Battalion, right? Medic call sign Raven 2. The trauma bay had gone completely silent again. Jennifer stood near the door, her mouth open. Webb looked like someone had hit him with a brick. The operator turned to address the room. This woman kept 8 wounded operators alive for 4 hours under sustained enemy fire after an IED strike destroyed her convoy outside Kandahar. We lost the vehicle, lost our radios, lost half our blood supply. She worked through all of it with a piece of shrapnel the size of your thumb stuck in her own leg. He looked back at Sarah. They gave you a Bronze Star for that, didn't they? Sarah didn't answer. Just kept working on the chest tube, her jaw set. Commendation with Valor device, the operator continued, plus a Purple Heart. And you walked away from all of it because... He paused. Well, that's your business. But don't stand there and tell me you're just a nurse. The patient's vitals stabilized. Sarah finished securing the chest tube, watching the blood and air drain into the collection chamber. He was going to make it. Probably wouldn't even remember how close he'd come. Webb found his voice finally. This is completely inappropriate. Mitchell violated hospital protocol by performing an invasive procedure without physician authorization. I'm reporting this to administration immediately. You do that, the older operator said mildly, and I'll report that you were about to kill a federal asset through gross negligence while his team watched. See which one of those conversations goes better for you. Webb's face went white. The operator turned back to Sarah. Commander Hayes is going to want to thank you himself when he wakes up. He's been with the unit for 12 years. A lot of us would have been dead without him. He paused. And a lot of us would have been dead without you too, back in the day. Sarah finished her charting, her hands moving on autopilot. She could feel everyone staring at her. Jennifer, the residents, the other nurses. Even the military guys were watching her differently now, with something that looked like respect. She hated it, hated being seen. This was exactly what she'd been trying to avoid. Mitchell, Webb's voice came from behind her. My office, now. She turned slowly. He stood near the doorway, his posture rigid with barely controlled rage. Whatever authority he'd lost in the trauma bay, he was determined to reassert it somewhere else. The older operator stepped between them. I don't think so. This is a hospital matter, Webb said tightly. It doesn't concern you. Actually, it does. Commander Hayes is under federal protection. That means everything concerning his care concerns us until he's stable and released. The operator crossed his arms. Corporal Mitchell stays where she is. It's okay, Sarah said quietly. She was tired. So tired. And this was inevitable anyway. Webb had been looking for a reason to get rid of her since she started. Now he had one. I'll go. She stripped off her gloves, dropped them in the biohazard bin, and followed Webb out of the trauma bay. Behind her, she heard Jennifer start to protest, heard one of the military guys say something sharp, but she kept walking. Webb's office was on the second floor, tucked away in the administrative wing where the fluorescent lights were newer and the carpet didn't have permanent stains. He didn't say a word the entire walk, just moved with quick, angry strides that made Sarah's leg ache worse trying to keep up. Inside, he slammed the door hard enough to rattle the framed diplomas on his wall. Sit. Sarah remained standing. Webb moved behind his desk, his hands shaking slightly as he pulled out a form. Do you have any idea what you've just done? You performed an invasive procedure without authorization. You contradicted a senior physician in front of staff and patients. You created a hostile environment and undermined the entire chain of command in this emergency department. I saved his life. You got lucky. Webb's voice rose to a shout. And even if you didn't, even if you were somehow right, that doesn't give you the authority to override my medical judgment. I don't care what you did in Afghanistan or wherever the hell you were. I don't care what medals they pinned on you. This is a civilian hospital with rules and procedures, and you just violated every single one of them. Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. She'd known this was coming, had known from the moment she saw recognition in that operator's eyes, that everything she'd built here, the quiet anonymity, the simple routine, the ability to just exist without being special or broken or memorable, was over. I'm suspending you effective immediately, Webb continued, filling out the form with sharp, angry strokes. Pending a full investigation into your conduct, you're to surrender your badge, leave hospital property, and not return until HR contacts you. And between you and me, Mitchell, I'm going to make damn sure that call never comes. He shoved the paper across the desk. Sign it. Sarah looked at the form. Looked at Webb. His face was flushed, his jaw tight, his whole body radiating self-righteous anger. He'd probably been waiting months for this moment. Years, maybe. She picked up the pen, signed her name. Get out, Webb said. Sarah turned and walked to the door, her hand on the handle, when Webb's phone rang. He answered it with a curt, "What?" Whatever the person on the other end said made his expression change. The anger drained away, replaced by something else. Confusion. Then concern. What do you mean, code blue? He stood up fast enough that his chair rolled back and hit the wall. Bay 4, Mrs. Patterson? He was already moving toward the door. I'm on my way. Sarah stepped aside as he rushed past her, and for a moment, just a brief, terrible moment, she thought about the conversation from earlier, the patient she'd flagged, the concern Webb had dismissed. She followed him back to the ER, her badge still clipped to her scrubs, even though she wasn't supposed to be there anymore. Nobody stopped her. Everyone was too focused on the chaos erupting in Bay 4. Mrs. Patterson was crashing, full arrest. Nurses performing CPR while a resident tried to intubate. Alarms screaming, family members being pulled out into the hallway by security. What happened? Webb demanded, pushing into the bay. Sudden cardiac arrest, one of the nurses gasped between compressions. She complained of worsening chest pain about 20 minutes ago, then collapsed. Webb's face went gray. Did anyone run an EKG? We did. Jennifer held up a strip. Showed ST elevation. She was having an MI the whole time. Myocardial infarction. Heart attack. The exact thing Sarah had warned about hours ago. Webb stared at the EKG strip like it was written in a foreign language. Around him, the code continued. Medications pushed, chest compressions ongoing, a defibrillator charging. Sarah watched from the doorway, feeling nothing. Just that cold, empty space where emotions used to live. They worked on Mrs. Patterson for 26 minutes before Webb finally called it. Time of death, 2:47 a.m. The bay went quiet except for the sound of someone crying in the hallway. Webb stood frozen at the head of the bed, the EKG strip still clutched in his hand. Jennifer looked up and saw Sarah standing there. Her eyes were red. You tried to tell him, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. You documented it. You told him something was wrong. Webb turned slowly, saw Sarah. His expression cycled through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds before settling on rage. You, he pointed at her. You should be gone. I told you to leave hospital property. I was leaving. Then leave. He moved toward her, close enough that she could smell coffee on his breath. Before I have security throw you out. The older military operator appeared from somewhere, stepping between them again. There a problem? This doesn't involve you, Webb snapped. Sure it does. She saved my commander's life. That makes her my problem. The operator looked at Sarah. You need a ride somewhere? Before she could answer, the hospital PA system crackled to life. All staff, we have an active security situation. Unknown aircraft approaching hospital airspace. Emergency protocols in effect. Everyone in the ER stopped moving. Through the windows, Sarah could see the night sky suddenly filled with lights. Not just one helicopter now. Multiple aircraft, military grade, moving in formation. The operator's radio crackled. He listened for a moment, then looked at Sarah with an expression she couldn't quite read. Well, he said quietly, this just got interesting. Outside, the helicopters began to descend. The windows rattled as the first Black Hawk touched down on the hospital's rooftop helipad, its rotors whipping rain across the glass in violent sheets. Two more circled overhead, their searchlights cutting through the storm like surgical blades. Webb's face had gone from red to pale in about 5 seconds. What the hell is going on? The operator, Sarah still didn't know his name, pressed his finger to his earpiece, listening. His expression tightened. We've got incoming VIP casualties. Multiple agencies involved. This facility is now under temporary federal jurisdiction. You can't just, already done. The operator looked at Sarah. How many trauma bays you got operational right now? 3, Sarah said automatically. Maybe 4 if we pull staff from the surgical floor. Webb whirled on her. You don't work here anymore, Mitchell. Stop answering questions. Actually, the operator said, pulling out a laminated ID card that made Webb's eyes widen, she does. As of right now, Corporal Mitchell is reinstated under emergency federal authority. Anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with Homeland Security. He turned back to Sarah. Get your people ready. We're about to get slammed. The ER erupted into controlled chaos. Nurses ran to prep the remaining trauma bays. Residents scrambled to pull equipment. The PA system kept announcing emergency protocols that nobody had actually practiced in years. Sarah moved on instinct, her suspended status apparently forgotten by everyone except Webb, who stood near the nurse's station looking like he'd swallowed glass. She grabbed Jennifer as the younger nurse rushed past. What do we know? Jennifer's face was flushed, her eyes wide. Some kind of federal operation went sideways downtown. Multiple casualties, at least 2 critical. They're bringing them here instead of Denver General because, she lowered her voice, because someone high up doesn't trust General Security. Through the windows, Sarah watched more vehicles arrive. Black SUVs with tinted windows, unmarked sedans that screamed federal agency. Men and women in suits poured out, all wearing earpieces, all moving with that same efficient purposefulness. The first stretcher came through the doors 6 minutes later. The patient was a woman, maybe 40, wearing what was left of a business suit. Blood soaked through the makeshift bandages across her abdomen. 2 agents flanked the gurney, hands on their weapons, scanning the ER like they expected an attack. GSW to the lower abdomen, one of the paramedics reported. Entry wound left side, no exit. BP's holding at 90/60. She's been stable, but we haven't examined for internal bleeding. Webb stepped forward, his professional mask sliding back into place despite everything. Get her to trauma 2. I want a full abdominal CT and no CT, one of the suits interrupted. She was maybe 35, dark hair pulled back tight, eyes like flint. No records, no registration. She doesn't exist on paper. I can't treat a patient without documentation. Yes, you can. And you will. The woman flashed a badge. Deputy Director Sharon Vance, FBI. This patient is part of an ongoing federal investigation. You'll treat her, stabilize her, and forget you ever saw her. Clear? Webb opened his mouth, closed it, nodded. They wheeled the patient into trauma 2, and Sarah followed without thinking. Jennifer was already there, cutting away clothing, establishing IV access. The woman on the table was conscious, her breathing rapid and shallow, eyes darting around the room. You're okay, Jennifer said softly. We're going to take care of you. The woman grabbed Jennifer's wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. They know I'm here. They'll come for me. Nobody's getting in here, one of the agents said from his position near the door. You're safe. Sarah pulled on gloves, her hands moving through the familiar routine. Check the entrance wound, assess for exit, monitor vitals. The woman's blood pressure was dropping despite the IV fluids. That meant internal bleeding, probably significant. Webb appeared in the doorway. We need to get her to surgery. Can't move her, Deputy Director Vance said. Too much exposure. You operate here or not at all. This is an ER, not an operating room. I don't have the proper equipment. Then figure it out, doctor. Because if she dies, 3 years of investigative work dies with her, and about 15 very bad people walk free. Vance's voice dropped. Make it work. Webb's jaw tightened, but he turned to the staff. Convert Trauma 2 to an operating environment. Get me a portable surgical setup. I need an anesthesiologist down here now. The ER transformed. Nurses ran for equipment. Residents dragged in surgical lights. Someone from upstairs brought down a portable anesthesia machine that looked like it hadn't been used since the 90s. Sarah helped prep the room, her mind cataloging everything they'd need. Suction, irrigation, surgical packs, blood products. This was insane. Operating in an ER bay without proper backup, without a surgical suite safety net, but she'd done worse. Had performed emergency surgery in the back of a transport truck while enemy rounds pinged off the armor plating. The second casualty arrived while they were still setting up. This one was male, younger, maybe 28. Gunshot to the upper thigh. The femoral artery was intact but damaged. Sarah could tell by the pulsatile bleeding that soaked through the pressure dressing. Trauma 3, she called out, pointing. He needs vascular access and aggressive fluid resuscitation. 2 more patients followed, then another, then 3 more, then 3. Within 20 minutes, every trauma bay was full, and they'd started putting patients in regular ER rooms. The military operators had been joined by FBI agents, DEA, ATF, everyone wearing different jackets, different badges, all with the same grim expressions. Sarah moved between rooms, triaging, treating, directing resources where they'd do the most good. Her legs screamed at her, but she ignored it. There wasn't time for pain. In Trauma 3, she worked on the vascular injury. Her fingers slick with blood as she applied direct pressure while a resident tried to get better IV access. I need 2 more large-bore IVs, Sarah said, and get me 4 units of O-neg from the blood bank. Move. The resident, a kid named Parker, who usually looked at Sarah like she was invisible, scrambled to comply. No attitude now, no condescension, just raw need for someone who knew what the hell they were doing. Across the ER, Webb operated on the female patient in Trauma 2. His voice clipped and professional as he called for instruments. Whatever else he was, the man could cut. Sarah had to give him that. She finished stabilizing her patient and moved to the next room, where Jennifer was struggling with a collapsed lung. Standard chest tube insertion, but Jennifer's hands were shaking. Talk me through it, Jennifer said, her voice tight. I've never done one without an attending. You know the anatomy. Sarah positioned herself where she could guide without taking over. Find your landmarks. Second intercostal space, mid-clavicular line, just like the mannequin. This isn't a mannequin. No, it's easier. Real tissue gives you feedback. Sarah kept her voice calm, steady. Make your incision. Shallow first. You're doing fine. Jennifer worked through the procedure, her breathing fast but her hands growing steadier as muscle memory took over. When the chest tube slid into place and air hissed out, the relief on her face was almost childlike. I did it. You did. Sarah checked the patient's vitals, oxygen saturation climbing. Good. Now secure it and document. She moved to the next patient, and the next, and the next. Time became fluid. The wall clock said 3:47 a.m., but it felt like either minutes or hours had passed. Sarah's scrubs were soaked with blood and sweat. Her leg had gone from aching to numb, which was somehow worse. In Trauma 1, Commander Hayes, the operator she'd saved earlier, had stabilized enough to be conscious. He watched the chaos through half-open eyes, his face pale but alert. The older operator who'd recognized Sarah stood guard nearby, his weapon now visible on his hip. Sarah stopped to check Hayes' vitals, adjusting his IV flow rate. You look like hell, Raven, Hayes murmured, his voice rough. You're not winning any beauty contests yourself, Commander. A weak smile. Fair point. He coughed, winced. Dawson told me what happened. The surgeon tried to kick you out? It's complicated. Sounds simple to me. You saved my life. He tried to stop you. Hayes's eyes sharpened despite his condition. How long you been working here? 18 months. And how long's he been treating you like garbage? Sarah didn't answer. Didn't need to. Hayes looked at Dawson, the older operator. Make a note. When this is done, we're having a conversation with hospital administration. Already on my list, Dawson said. Across the ER, Webb emerged from Trauma 2, stripping off bloody gloves. His face was drawn, exhausted, but the patient had survived. Deputy Director Vance met him at the doorway, and they spoke in low tones that Sarah couldn't hear. Another wave of patients arrived, smaller injuries this time, broken bones, lacerations, minor gunshot wounds. The kind of casualties that would normally be routine but felt overwhelming when added to everything else. Sarah treated a DEA agent with a broken wrist, a FBI tech analyst with a deep scalp laceration, a marshal with a through-and-through shoulder wound that had somehow missed everything important. Each one had pieces of the story. A federal raid on a human trafficking network. Multiple locations hit simultaneously. Someone had leaked the operation, and the traffickers fought back harder than expected, hence the casualties. We got most of them, though, the marshal told her while she irrigated his wound. Arrested 18 people, rescued 43 victims. Kids, mostly. Some as young as 8. Sarah's hands didn't shake, but something cold twisted in her gut. She'd seen too much ugliness in the world, knew exactly what people were capable of when they thought nobody was watching. Glad you got them, she said quietly. By 5:30 a.m., the surge had finally slowed. Most of the critical patients were stable or had been moved to surgery upstairs. The ER still buzzed with federal agents and military personnel, but the raw chaos had settled into something more manageable. Sarah leaned against the wall near the supply room, her leg finally giving out. She slid down until she was sitting on the floor, her head tilted back, eyes closed. Footsteps approached. She opened her eyes to find Deputy Director Vance standing over her, holding 2 cups of coffee. The FBI agent held one out. You look like you need this more than I do. Sarah took it. The coffee was terrible, hospital cafeteria sludge, but it was hot and caffeinated, and that was enough. Vance sat down next to her, which seemed wildly out of character for a senior federal agent, but whatever. Normal rules didn't seem to apply tonight. I read your file, Vance said after a moment. Sarah's stomach dropped. What file? Your service record. Came up when I ran background on hospital staff for security clearance. Vance sipped her coffee. Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, 3 separate commendations for courage under fire. You kept 8 men alive during a sustained enemy contact that lasted, she checked her phone, 3 hours and 47 minutes. 4 hours, Sarah corrected automatically. They rounded down. Right, 4 hours. Vance turned to look at her. So what the hell are you doing working night shifts in a Denver ER where your boss treats you like the help? Sarah didn't answer immediately. How did you explain that after everything, after the blood and the screaming and watching people die in your hands? Sometimes all you wanted was to be invisible? To be nobody? To have a job where nobody expected you to be a hero because you'd already used up your lifetime allotment of bravery and didn't have any left? It's quiet, she said finally. Usually. Vance laughed, sharp and genuine. Well, you picked the wrong night for quiet. She stood, brushing off her pants. When this settles, we should talk. FBI's always looking for people with your skill set, medical background plus combat experience. You'd be valuable. I'm done with that life. Maybe. Or maybe you just needed a break. Vance pulled out a business card, set it on the floor next to Sarah. Think about it. She walked away, back into the organized chaos of the ER. Sarah picked up the card, looked at it, tucked it into her pocket without really deciding to. Across the room, Webb was talking to a hospital administrator who'd arrived sometime during the night. A woman in her 50s, steel gray hair, expensive suit that looked out of place in the blood-spattered ER, Director Patricia Keene, if Sarah remembered right. She ran St. Vincent's with an iron fist and a budget spreadsheet. Whatever Webb was saying, Keene didn't look impressed. Her expression stayed neutral, but her posture had that particular stiffness that meant someone was about to have a very bad day. Sarah pulled herself to her feet, ignoring the protests from her leg, and went back to work. There were still patients to check, charts to complete, supplies to restock. She was restocking Trauma 1 when she heard raised voices from the hallway. Webb's voice, "Completely inappropriate. Mitchell was suspended. She had no authority to be treating patients." Keene's voice, cold as winter. "Dr. Webb, I suggest you stop talking right now." Sarah moved to the doorway, staying out of sight but close enough to hear. "I have documentation," Webb continued. "She performed invasive procedures without authorization, undermined my medical authority, created a hostile I've read your documentation," Keene interrupted. "I've also read the statements from 6 different federal agents, 3 military personnel, and 4 members of your own staff. Would you like to know what they say?" Silence. "They say that Nurse Mitchell saved multiple lives tonight through skilled intervention and crisis management. They say she performed flawlessly under extreme pressure. And they say," Keene's voice dropped to something dangerous, "that you attempted to prevent her from treating a federal asset because of a personal grudge. That's not—" "I also pulled the file on Mrs. Patterson, the patient who died of an MY at 2:47 this morning. The one Nurse Mitchell flagged for cardiac concerns 3 hours before her arrest. The concerns you dismissed and failed to follow up on." More silence. Sarah's pulse quickened. "I'm recommending a full review of that case to the medical board," Keene continued, "along with a review of your treatment decisions over the past 6 months. We've had 7 formal complaints about your behavior towards staff, Dr. Webb. 7. I've overlooked them because you bring in revenue and good surgical outcomes. But this?" She paused. "This is potential malpractice combined with workplace harassment. So no, you will not be filing any complaints against Nurse Mitchell. Is that clear? You're protecting her because of politics. I'm protecting this hospital from a lawsuit and a PR nightmare. You tried to suspend a decorated combat veteran for saving a federal agent's life while your own negligence contributed to a patient death. Do you understand how that would play in the media?" Keene's voice could have cut steel. "You should be thanking every deity you can name that Mitchell hasn't sued us into oblivion already." Webb didn't respond. "You're on administrative leave pending investigation," Keene said, "effective immediately. Security will escort you out. Don't come back until HR calls you." Footsteps approached, and Sarah quickly moved back into Trauma 1, busying herself with checking equipment that didn't need checking. Webb walked past the doorway, flanked by 2 security guards. His face was gray, his eyes fixed straight ahead. He didn't look at anyone. Jennifer appeared next to Sarah, her expression shocked. "Did that just happen?" "Seems like it." "Holy shit." Jennifer let out a breath. "He's been here 12 years. I've never seen anyone just remove him like that." Sarah didn't respond. She felt strange. Not triumphant exactly, not vindicated. Just tired. Exhausted down to her bones. Commander Hayes was awake again, watching from his bed. "You okay, Raven?" "I'm fine." "You don't look fine." "Yeah, well, you look like someone shot you in the chest, so we're even." He laughed, then immediately regretted it based on his wince. "Touché." Dawson checked his watch. "Transport's coming for you in 20. Denver General's got a surgical suite ready for your chest reconstruction." "What about the others?" "Most are stable. A few going to surgery here. The witness," he meant the woman from Trauma 2, "is being moved to a secure facility." He looked at Sarah. "You did good work tonight. Saved a lot of lives." Sarah just nodded. What else was there to say? The sun was starting to rise when they finally wheeled Hayes out for transport. He lifted a hand in farewell as they pushed his gurney toward the ambulance bay, and Sarah returned the gesture. The ER slowly emptied. Federal agents departed. Military personnel pulled out. The patients either went to surgery, got admitted, or were discharged with follow-up instructions and instructions to never speak about tonight. By 7 a.m., it was just the regular day shift staff arriving to a ER that looked like a war zone. Blood on the floors. Equipment scattered everywhere. Every trash can overflowing with biohazard waste. Jennifer found Sarah in the break room, sitting with another cup of terrible coffee and staring at nothing. "Patricia Keene wants to see you," Jennifer said. "Her office. Now." Sarah's stomach tightened. Here it comes. Whatever temporary reprieve she'd gotten during the crisis was over. Now came the paperwork, the investigations, the bureaucratic machinery that would grind everything down to who violated which policy when. She took the elevator to the administrative floor, her legs screaming with each step down the carpeted hallway. Keene's office was at the end, large windows overlooking downtown Denver, the mountains visible in the distance. The director sat behind her desk, reading something on her computer. She looked up when Sarah entered. "Sit." Sarah sat. Keene studied her for a long moment. "I'm going to be direct because I don't have time for anything else. You've been working here for 18 months. In that time, you've received 0 complaints from patients, 0 disciplinary actions, and your performance reviews are consistently above average." She paused. "You've also been systemically undermined by Dr. Webb and largely ignored by the rest of the staff. Why didn't you file a complaint?" "Would it have mattered?" "Probably not," Keene admitted. "Webb brings in $2 million a year in surgical revenue. You're a night shift nurse. The math isn't complicated." She closed her laptop. "That changes now. Webb's likely done here. The investigation into Mrs. Patterson's death is going to open up about 6 other cases where his judgment was questionable. And the board is going to want someone's head on a pike." Sarah waited. "I'm offering you a position as lead trauma response coordinator," Keene said. "You'd be responsible for training staff in emergency protocols, managing high acuity responses, and serving as a clinical resource for complex cases. It's a pay grade increase and puts you in a supervisory role." Sarah blinked. "I don't understand." "Which part?" "Any of it. 6 hours ago I was suspended. Now you're promoting me? 6 hours ago this hospital was about to be the center of a federal incident with multiple agencies watching our every move. You prevented that from becoming a disaster." Keene leaned forward. "I've also had 3 separate federal agencies ask for your contact information in the last hour. FBI wants to recruit you. Homeland Security wants to recruit you. Even the Pentagon called asking about your availability for contract work." She smiled thinly. "I'd prefer to keep you here if possible. So, what do you say?" Sarah's mind spun. This morning she'd been nobody, invisible, safe in her anonymity. Now suddenly everyone wanted a piece of her. "Can I think about it?" "You have 24 hours. After that, I need an answer." Keene handed her a folder. "Your suspension is lifted. Back pay for tonight's shift. And a formal apology from the hospital for Dr. Webb's conduct." Sarah took the folder, her hands numb. "One more thing," Keene said as Sarah reached the door. "Whatever happened to you overseas, whatever made you want to disappear, nobody here needs to know about it unless you want them to. Your service record is your business. But hiding that level of skill and experience?" She shook her head. "That's a waste. Think about that too." Sarah left the office in a daze. The hallway seemed too bright, too loud, too real. She made it to the elevator, pressed the button for the ground floor, and leaned against the wall as it descended. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her thumb the screen. "Mitchell?" "Corporal Mitchell." The voice was male, professional, unfamiliar. "This is Colonel David Rains, Joint Special Operations Command. We need to talk about Kandahar." Sarah's blood went cold. "I don't discuss classified operations." "This isn't about the operation. It's about who knew you'd be on that convoy." The elevator dinged, the doors opened to the lobby level. Sarah didn't move. "What are you talking about?" "The IED that hit your unit wasn't random," Rains said. "We've had intelligence suggesting that convoy was targeted specifically. Someone leaked your route. Someone wanted your team dead." A pause. "We think they might still be looking." The lobby was busy. Visitors coming and going, staff changing shifts, the normal rhythm of a hospital morning. Everything looked ordinary, safe. Sarah's hand tightened on the phone. "Why are you telling me this now? It's been 3 years." "Because 2 weeks ago, someone accessed your personnel file. Someone with high-level clearance who had no legitimate reason to be looking. And yesterday," Rains took a breath, "your old unit commander was found dead in his home in Virginia. They're calling it suicide, but the scene was staged." Sarah's heart hammered. "Commander Bricks?" "Yes. Which means whoever wanted you dead then might still be cleaning up loose ends." Rains's voice dropped. "I need you to come in. We need to debrief you, figure out what you know, who might be targeting you, for your own safety." Through the hospital's front windows, Sarah saw a dark sedan pull into the circular drive. Tinted windows, government plates. 2 men got out, both wearing suits, both scanning the area like they expected trouble. Are those your people? Sarah asked. What people? The two men who just parked out front. Silence on the other end. Then, Mitchell, I didn't send anyone to pick you up. We were going to schedule a meeting for next week. His voice sharpened. Get away from the windows, right now. Sarah moved, her training snapping into place automatically. She stepped away from the elevator, heading toward the back corridors, keeping walls between herself and the front entrance. Who are they? She asked quietly. I don't know. But if they're not mine, and they're looking for you... Rains didn't finish the sentence. The two men entered the lobby. One walked to the information desk. The other's eyes swept the space with professional efficiency and stopped directly on Sarah. For a heartbeat, they stared at each other across the crowded lobby. Then he reached inside his jacket. Sarah didn't wait to see what he was reaching for. She turned and ran. Behind her, someone shouted. Footsteps pounded across the lobby tile. She hit the stairwell door hard enough to make her shoulder ache, taking the steps 2 at a time despite her legs' protests. Mitchell, what's happening? Rains's voice crackled in her ear. 2 men, lobby, one's armed. She reached the second-floor landing, her breath already coming fast. I'm heading up. Wrong direction. You need to get out of the building. They're blocking the exits. Sarah pushed through the second-floor door into the corridor. A few early visitors turned to stare at her. She forced herself to walk, not run. Running drew attention. I need somewhere defensible. Find hospital security. Security's 2 rent-a-cops with pepper spray. These guys are professionals. She turned a corner, her mind racing through the building's layout. The administrative wing, storage areas, patient floors. Nowhere good, nowhere safe. Her phone buzzed. Incoming call from a different number. She ignored it. The stairwell door banged open behind her. 50 feet back, maybe less. Sarah ducked into a supply closet, pressing herself against the wall behind a shelving unit stocked with linens. Footsteps passed. Paused. Kept going. She waited 30 seconds. 40. Then slipped back into the corridor, moving the opposite direction. Her leg burned, but she pushed through it, muscle memory from training taking over. Assess. Adapt. Survive. The phone buzzed again. Same number. This time she answered, keeping her voice low. What? Corporal Mitchell, this is Agent Vance. Where are you? Second floor, east wing. Sarah rounded another corner, heading toward the older part of the hospital where the corridors were a maze of renovations and dead ends. 2 men are hunting me. Armed. Professional. I'm still in the building, cafeteria level. Can you get to the service elevators? They'll be watching the elevators. Then I'll come to you. Stay on the line. Keep moving. Sarah's heart hammered. Her hands were steady, always were when things got bad, but something cold had settled in her chest. Someone had found her. After 3 years of hiding, of being nobody, someone had tracked her down, and Commander Bricks was dead. She thought about Kandahar, the convoy, the way the IED had been placed exactly where it would do maximum damage, the way enemy fire had come from 3 directions simultaneously, coordinated and precise. They'd called it bad luck at the time. Wrong place, wrong route. But if Rains was right, if someone had leaked their position... Mitchell, Vance's voice pulled her back. What floor are you on now? Still second, heading toward the old surgical wing. She passed a nurse's station where a single RN looked up from her charting. Sarah kept walking. It's mostly storage now. Renovation project got abandoned. Good. Lots of places to hide. I'm on my way up. The corridor narrowed. Older tile. Scuffed walls. That particular smell of spaces that nobody used anymore. Sarah tried a door. Locked. Another? Locked. The third one opened into what looked like a former patient room, now filled with broken equipment and dusty furniture. She slipped inside, leaving the door slightly ajar so she could see the corridor. Her phone screen showed 3 missed calls now. 2 from unknown numbers. 1 from Jennifer. The sound of footsteps again. Slower this time. Methodical. Sarah's fingers found the edge of a metal tray on one of the shelves. Not much of a weapon, but better than nothing. She'd fought with worse. A shadow passed the doorway. Stopped. The handle turned. The door swung open. The man was maybe 40, fit, wearing a suit that was too nice for hospital work. His hand rested inside his jacket. His eyes scanned the room with professional efficiency, passed right over Sarah's hiding spot behind a stack of defunct monitors, then snapped back. "There you are." Sarah threw the tray. It caught him across the forearm, and whatever he'd been reaching for clattered to the floor. She followed with her body weight, driving her shoulder into his midsection, using momentum and surprise because she didn't have strength or size. They hit the corridor wall hard. He grunted, twisted, got a hand on her throat. Sarah drove her knee up, missed anything vital, but made him flinch. His grip loosened and she broke free, stumbling backward. He didn't chase her, just straightened his jacket, breathing hard, watching her with cold calculation. "Easy," he said. "We just want to talk." People who just want to talk don't pull weapons. "You ran. What was I supposed to do?" Sarah backed toward the corner where the corridor branched. Her leg was screaming now, barely supporting her weight. If this came down to a foot chase, she'd lose. The man took a step forward. "My name is Ryan Costas. I'm a contractor with Defense Intelligence. We've been looking for you." "Funny. Colonel Raines said nobody was supposed to be looking." Something flickered across Costas's face. "You talked to Raines?" "5 minutes ago. He said Commander Brix is dead. He said someone's cleaning up loose ends from Kandahar." Sarah's voice hardened. "Which side are you on?" "The side that wants you alive." Costas pulled out an ID badge slowly, kept his other hand visible. "Check it if you want. But we need to move. If I found you, others will too." "Others like who?" "Like the people who set up your convoy 3 years ago." He took another step. "The operation you were part of, the medical convoy through Kandahar province, wasn't random. It was cover for an intelligence asset we were extracting from Taliban custody. Only 6 people knew the route. Someone leaked it." Sarah's stomach dropped. "That's classified. Everything about that day is classified, which is why people keep dying." Costas glanced down the corridor, tense. "Brix was murdered because he started asking questions. 2 other members of your unit died in the last 18 months. 1 car accident, 1 overdose. Both look natural until you start connecting dots." "You're lying. Check the names. Sergeant William Torres. Specialist Amanda Reeves." He pulled out his phone, held it up showing photos. Sarah recognized them both. Torres had been their driver. Reeves had manned the radio. The corridor felt too small suddenly. Too quiet. "Who leaked the intel?" Sarah asked. "That's what we're trying to figure out. But someone high up doesn't want us looking." Costas pocketed his phone. "There's a car outside. Federal protection until we sort this out. Come with me now or wait here for whoever else is coming." Footsteps echoed from the opposite direction. Multiple people, moving fast. Costas's expression tightened. "That's not my partner." He pulled his weapon, Glock 19 standard issue, and positioned himself between Sarah and the approaching sounds. For a moment they stood there in the abandoned corridor, both breathing hard, neither trusting the other, but temporarily aligned by mutual threat. 3 men rounded the corner. They weren't hospital security, weren't federal agents. They moved like military contractors, spread formation, weapons already drawn. "Down!" Costas shoved Sarah behind him and fired twice. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space. One of the men dropped, clutching his shoulder. The others returned fire, and the corridor exploded into chaos. Sarah hit the floor, her training screaming at her to move, find cover, assess the threat. Costas fired again, backing toward her, using his body as a shield. Rounds punched through drywall above their heads, showering them with dust and debris. "Go!" Costas shouted. "Service stairs! End of the hall!" Sarah ran. Her leg nearly gave out twice, but she pushed through, the sound of gunfire echoing behind her. She hit the service stairwell door and practically fell down the first flight, catching herself on the railing. Above, more shots. Someone screamed. Couldn't tell who. She kept moving. Down another flight. Another, her hands slick with sweat on the metal railing. The service stairs were narrow, institutional, designed for maintenance access, not foot traffic. They twisted back on themselves in tight switchbacks. Second floor, first floor, ground level. Sarah burst through the exit door into a loading bay area. Delivery trucks, dumpsters, the smell of garbage and diesel. Morning sunlight cut through the shadows at harsh angles. A black SUV sat near the far exit, engine running. Agent Vance stood beside it, weapon drawn. "Get in!" Sarah didn't hesitate. She sprinted across the loading bay, threw herself into the SUV's back seat. Vance slammed the door and dove into the driver's seat, hitting the gas before she'd even fully closed her own door. They rocketed out of the loading bay onto the street, tires squealing. Vance drove like she'd trained for this, aggressive but controlled, weaving through early morning traffic with practiced efficiency. "What the hell happened up there?" Vance demanded, checking mirrors. "I heard shots. 3 men, armed. They engaged someone claiming to be defense intelligence." Sarah twisted to look through the rear window. No pursuit yet. "A contractor named Ryan Costas. Never heard of him. He said people from my old unit are being killed. Said the Kandahar convoy was compromised." Sarah's hands were shaking now, adrenaline crash hitting hard. "Is that true?" Vance didn't answer immediately. She took a hard right, then a left, putting distance between them and the hospital. Finally, "What did Costas tell you exactly?" "That 6 people knew our route, that someone leaked it, that whoever did is cleaning up witnesses. That's not entirely wrong." Vance merged onto the highway, accelerating hard. FBI's had an investigation running parallel to military intelligence. "We think there was a mole in the operational planning chain, someone with access to classified convoy routes." She glanced in the mirror. "But we didn't know they were actively hunting survivors." Sarah's stomach twisted. "How many of us are left? From your unit?" "You, Commander Hayes, who's currently in surgery, and 3 others scattered across the country." Vance's jaw tightened. "And as of this morning, someone just put you on the board. Why now? It's been 3 years." "Because 2 weeks ago, Commander Bricks requested access to after-action reports from Kandahar province. He was building a case, making noise. That got someone's attention." They drove in silence for a moment. Denver's skyline receded behind them as Vance took them into the suburban sprawl south of the city. Sarah's phone buzzed. Colonel Rains calling back. She answered on speaker. "Mitchell, where are you?" Rains sounded tense. "With FBI. Safe." "What happened to Costas?" "Who?" "Ryan Costas, Defense Intelligence. He said he was with you." Silence on the other end. Then, "Mitchell, I don't have anyone named Costas working this case. Nobody was authorized to approach you." Sarah's blood went cold. "He had credentials, knew details about Kandahar." Half the intelligence community knows details about Kandahar because it's been the subject of 3 separate investigations. Rains's voice hardened. "If someone approached you claiming to be defense intelligence, they were lying. Where is he now?" "Hospital. Maybe dead." 3 other men engaged him. Christ. Rains muttered something off phone to someone else. "Okay, listen. We're pulling protection details for all surviving members of your unit. Full federal custody until we sort this out. Agent Vance will take you to a safe house." "What about the hospital?" Sarah asked. "They're expecting me back." "You're not going back. Not until we identify who's hunting you and why." Rains paused. "We've got teams moving on the hospital now. We'll secure the scene, ID the bodies, see if we can trace who sent them." Vance took an exit ramp heading into a residential area. "Where's the safe house?" "Littleton, secure facility. Coordinates coming through now." Rains's tone softened slightly. "Mitchell, I know this is a lot, but you're going to be okay. We'll figure this out." The call ended. Sarah leaned back against the seat, her whole body aching. Less than 12 hours ago, her biggest problem had been Marcus Webb, and whether she'd still have a job. Now people were dead, shooters were hunting her, and apparently someone had been systematically murdering her old unit for reasons she didn't understand. "You okay?" Vance asked. "Define okay." "Fair point." Vance checked her mirrors again. "For what it's worth, you handled that well back there. Most civilians freeze when shots get fired." "I'm not most civilians." "No, you're really not." Vance turned onto a quiet street lined with middle-class houses. "Question, though. Why'd you leave the military? Someone with your record could have written their ticket anywhere." Sarah didn't answer it immediately. "How did you explain that after Kandahar, after holding together men who were literally coming apart under her hands, after 4 hours of unrelenting horror, she'd woken up one day and realized she couldn't do it anymore? Couldn't be that person. Couldn't carry that weight." "I was tired," she said finally. "Of what?" "Everything." Vance nodded like she understood. Maybe she did. They pulled up to a nondescript 2-story house. beige siding, standard yard, absolutely nothing remarkable about it. Vance parked in the driveway, killed the engine. "Stay here. Let me clear it first." Vance got out, weapon drawn, moving to the front door with practiced caution. She unlocked it with a key from her pocket, disappeared inside. Sarah sat alone in the SUV, watching the quiet suburban street. Kids' bikes in driveways, basketball hoops, a woman walking a golden retriever. Normal people living normal lives, completely unaware that someone was systematically hunting soldiers who'd survived an attack 3 years ago. Her phone buzzed again, Jennifer this time. "Sarah? Oh my God, are you okay? Someone said there was shooting in the hospital." "I'm fine. I'm safe." "Where are you?" "The police are here, and federal agents, and they're evacuating the second floor." "Jennifer, listen to me. I can't talk long, but I need you to do something." Sarah's mind raced. "Dr. Webb, do you know where he went after security escorted him out?" "What? No, I don't know." "Why?" "Because whoever's hunting me might go after anyone I've been in contact with. Webb, you, other staff members. You need to tell security to watch for suspicious activity. Anyone asking questions about me, anyone unusual." "Sarah, you're scaring me." "Good. Be scared. Be careful." Sarah heard Vance coming back. "I have to go. Don't tell anyone we talked." She ended the call before Jennifer could respond. Vance opened the car door. "House is clear. Let's get you inside." The safe house looked exactly like every other FBI safe house Sarah had seen in movies. Bland furniture, reinforced windows, probably enough surveillance equipment to monitor a small country. Vance led her to a living room and gestured to the couch. "Sit. I'll get you water." Sarah sat. Her leg was on fire now, the old injury protesting hours of abuse. She rolled up her scrub pants to check the scar tissue. Angry red, slightly swollen, nothing she could do about it now. Vance returned with water and a first aid kit. "That looks bad." "It's fine." "Let me rephrase. That looks infected." Vance opened the kit, pulled out antibiotics and bandages. "You're not doing anyone any good if sepsis takes you down." Sarah let Vance clean and dress the injury, too tired to argue. The FBI agent worked with surprising gentleness, her fingers deft and professional. "I was Army too," Vance said quietly. "Military police. Did 3 tours before I joined the Bureau, so I get it. The injury that never quite heals right, the way people look at you when they find out what you did, the way you just want to be invisible sometimes. Is there a point to this? The point is you're not alone, and you're not going to face this by yourself." Vance finished with the bandage, sat back. "The people hunting you made a mistake today. They exposed themselves. Now we can hunt them back." A phone rang. Not Sarah's, Vance's. The agent answered, listened for a moment, her expression darkening. "Understood. We're secure here. Keep me updated." She hung up. "What?" Sarah asked. "Hospital security footage. They identified the 3 men who engaged Costas." Vance pulled out her phone, showed Sarah a series of screenshots. All former military. All working for a private security contractor called Redstone Global. Sarah studied the images. Didn't recognize any of them. Never heard of Redstone. Most people haven't. They do off-the-books work for clients who need deniability. Wet work, asset protection, information extraction. Vance swiped to another image. "This is interesting, though. Redstone Global is a subsidiary of a larger defense contractor. Guess who sits on their board of directors?" The image showed a distinguished older man in military dress uniform. Salt and pepper hair, chest full of medals, strong jaw. Sarah's breath stopped. "Brigadier General Marcus Hyland," Vance said. "He was Deputy Commander of Special Operations Command during the Kandahar deployment." Sarah's voice came out flat. "He's the one who authorized our convoy route." "Right, which means if someone leaked your position, he was either involved or he's covering for whoever was." Sarah stood up, her leg forgotten, adrenaline surging again. Brix reported to Hyland directly. If Brix started investigating, Hyland would have known. And if Hyland ordered Brix's death, Vance trailed off, the implications hanging heavy. Sarah paced the small living room, her mind racing through connections. Hyland had been at the operational briefings, had access to convoy routes, had authority to alter schedules and coordinates. If he'd wanted to leak their position to enemy forces, he could have done it easily. But why? "What was the objective in Kandahar?" Vance asked. "Your convoy. What was the actual mission? Medical supplies to a forward operating base. Routine run. Except it wasn't routine. Costa said you were covering for an intelligence extraction. Sarah stopped pacing. We weren't told that. Our orders were medical transport. That's it. Which means the extraction was compartmentalized. Only Highland and maybe a handful of others knew the real objective. Vance stood, moving to a laptop set up on a side table. She typed rapidly. If Highland was running an unauthorized operation, using your convoy as cover, and if something went wrong, he'd need to bury it, Sarah finished. Permanently. They stared at each other. We need proof, Vance said. Something concrete linking Highland to Redstone, to the hit on your convoy, to Brix's death. Right now it's all speculation. What about Costas? If he's really defense intelligence, if he's alive, he's in federal custody by now. We can interview him. Vance made a call, spoke in low tones to whoever answered. Hung up. Costas is in surgery, critical condition. Took 2 rounds to the chest. Even if he survives, he won't be talking for days. Sarah sank back onto the couch, exhaustion crashing over her. So what now? Now we wait. My team is running down Highland's financials, travel records, communications. If he's dirty, we'll find it. Vance checked her weapon, reloaded. In the meantime, you stay here. Don't go outside. Don't call anyone. Don't. The window exploded inward. Glass rained across the living room. Vance dove one way, Sarah the other. Something metallic bounced across the floor. Flashbang. Sarah squeezed her eyes shut and covered her ears, but it wasn't enough. The detonation hit like a physical blow, white light and pressure and sound that turned the world into ringing silence. She rolled, tried to stand, her equilibrium completely gone. Hands grabbed her, rough, efficient. Someone zip-tied her wrists. She thrashed, got kneed in the stomach hard enough to empty her lungs. Through blurred vision, she saw Vance on the floor, blood streaming from a cut above her eye. 2 men in tactical gear stood over her. A third man approached Sarah. Older, familiar somehow. He crouched down, studied her face. "Hello, Corporal Mitchell," he said, though she could barely hear him through the ringing. "General Highland sends his regards." He pulled out a syringe. Charm. Sarah tried to fight, tried to do anything, but her body wouldn't cooperate. The needle went into her neck, and cold spread through her veins like ice water. The room tilted, went gray, went dark. Her last thought before unconsciousness took her was that she'd survived Kandahar, survived 3 years of hiding, survived this morning's attack, only to fail at the finish line. When Sarah woke, everything hurt. Her head throbbed with the flashbang's after effects. Her wrists burned from the zip ties. Her leg felt like someone had taken a hammer to it. She was in a vehicle. Could tell by the movement, the engine vibration. A van, maybe. No windows in the back. Just metal walls and 2 men in tactical gear watching her with professional detachment. "She's awake," one of them said into a radio. Sarah tested the restraints. Zip ties on her wrists, more on her ankles. She was sitting on a bench seat, her back against the van's wall. No obvious weapons within reach. No way to get leverage for a break. The van slowed, turned, stopped. The rear doors opened. Daylight flooded in, making Sarah squint. They were in an industrial area, warehouses and storage facilities, the kind of place where screaming wouldn't draw attention. The 2 men hauled her out of the van. Her legs buckled and they dragged her, not gently, across cracked asphalt to a warehouse door. Inside was exactly what she expected. Empty space, concrete floor, a single chair in the middle of the room. They shoved her into it, secured her ankles to the chair legs, her wrists to the armrests. Then they left. Sarah sat in the silence, breathing hard, her mind racing through options. She'd been in worse situations. Kandahar had been worse. Being trapped in an overturned vehicle with enemy fighters closing in had been worse. This was just another problem to solve. The warehouse door opened again. General Marcus Highland walked in like he was touring a base, hands clasped behind his back, posture military perfect. He looked older than in the photo Vance had shown her. Early 60s, gray hair, lines carved deep around his eyes and mouth. He stopped a few feet away, studying her. Corporal Sarah Mitchell, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart, commendations for courage under fire. His voice was cultured, educated, the voice of someone who'd spent decades giving orders that people followed without question. You were supposed to die in Kandahar. Sorry to disappoint. Oh, I'm not disappointed. Quite the opposite. Hyland pulled up another chair, sat facing her. You're the only one who survived with memory intact. The others either died immediately or suffered traumatic brain injuries from the blast. But you, he smiled. You remember everything, don't you? Sarah said nothing. The convoy route, the extraction point, the timing. Hyland leaned forward. What do you remember about the objective? Medical supply run. Don't insult me, you're too smart to believe that. His voice hardened. You were cover for an intelligence operation. We were extracting a high-value asset from Taliban custody, someone who'd been deep undercover for 18 months, someone who had information worth billions in future operations. Who? That's classified, but here's what matters. The extraction went wrong. Our asset was compromised. The Taliban knew we were coming. And when your convoy got hit, our asset got caught in the crossfire. Hyland's jaw tightened. He died. 18 months of work. Billions in future intelligence value. Gone. And you blamed us. I blamed whoever leaked the operation. Someone on my team sold us out. Someone I trusted. He stood, paced. I've spent 3 years hunting that mole, eliminating possibilities, and now I'm down to the final names. Sarah's stomach dropped. You killed your own people. I eliminated security threats. There's a difference. Hyland turned back to her. Bricks was getting too close. Torres had gambling debts, easy leverage for foreign intelligence. Reeves was sleeping with a contractor who had ties to Afghan warlords. Each one represented a potential leak. And me? You're the last one, the final possibility. Hyland crouched in front of her chair. So here's how this works. You're going to tell me everything you remember from that day. Every detail, every conversation, every person who knew about the convoy, and then I'm going to decide whether you were the leak. And if I was? Then you die knowing you betrayed your country. And if I wasn't? Hyland smiled. Then you die knowing you were collateral damage. He stood, walked toward the warehouse door. Wait, Sarah said. He stopped. If you're so sure there was a mole, why not just check the records? Communications logs, file access, security footage? I did. Everything was clean, too clean. Hyland's expression darkened. Whoever leaked the intel knew how to cover their tracks, which means it was someone with high-level access, someone skilled in operational security. Someone like you. The words hung in the air. Hyland turned slowly. What did you say? You had access to everything. Communications, routes, timing, asset identity. Sarah's voice steadied. And you've spent 3 years killing anyone who might figure that out. Not hunting a mole. Covering your tracks. For a long moment, Hyland just stared at her. Then he laughed, sharp and genuine. You really are smart. I almost wish... He shook his head. It doesn't matter. Whatever you figured out dies with you. He pulled out his phone, typed something. A moment later, one of the tactical contractors entered, weapon drawn. Make it clean, Hyland said. No mess for forensics. He walked out. The contractor moved towards Sarah, raising his weapon, and the warehouse door exploded inward in a shower of wood and metal. The contractor spun toward the noise, weapon tracking, but he was too slow. Dawson came through first, rifle up, followed by 3 more operators in full tactical gear. The contractor managed to squeeze off 1 round before Dawson put 2 in his chest. The man dropped like someone had cut his strings. Clear left! Clear right! 1 hostile down, hostage secured! Hands worked at Sarah's restraints. Zip ties snapped. Someone pressed a bottle of water into her hands while another operator checked her for injuries. You good? Dawson asked, crouched in front of her. Sarah's hand shook as she drank. How did you find me? Vance. She hit her panic button before they knocked her out. We've been tracking the van since it left the safe house. Dawson helped her stand. Her leg buckled immediately and he caught her. Easy. You're running on fumes. Hyland. He just left, maybe 2 minutes ago. We saw him. Dawson's expression was grim. FBI's got units moving on his location now, but we need to get you out of here first. They moved toward the shattered doorway, 2 operators flanking Sarah, weapons scanning for threats. Outside, 3 black SUVs idled in formation. More operators secured the perimeter. Sarah caught Dawson's arm. Vance, is she alive? Concussion and some cuts, but she'll make it. He guided her toward the lead SUV. She's the one who called in Commander Hayes' unit. Figured if anyone could track you fast, it'd be us. They loaded Sarah into the middle vehicle. The convoy pulled out immediately, moving fast through the industrial district. Sarah watched through the tinted windows as warehouses and storage lots blurred past. Her phone, somehow still in her pocket, buzzed. Colonel Rains. Mitchell. Thank Christ. Are you hurt? I'm okay. Highland confessed everything. He's the mole. He leaked our convoy position in Kandahar. Silence on the line. Then, you're certain? He told me himself. Said he's been eliminating anyone who might figure it out. Sarah's voice hardened. He killed Bricks. Torres? Reeves? How many others? We're still counting. Rains sounded tired. FBI just breached Highland's office at Fort Carson. They found files, communications records, evidence of payoffs from foreign intelligence services going back 5 years. A pause. He sold out more than just your convoy, Mitchell. Dozens of operations, hundreds of lives. Sarah leaned her head back against the seat, nausea rolling through her gut. She'd served under Highland's command, had trusted him. They all had. Where's he now? She asked. Last known location was the warehouse district, but he's got resources. Safe houses, false identities, offshore accounts. Rains hesitated. He might run. Then stop him. We're trying, but Highland's been planning his exit strategy for years. If he gets outside U.S. jurisdiction, he won't. Sarah didn't know how she knew that, but she did. Men like Highland didn't run. They doubled down. He thinks he's covered his tracks. He thinks killing me was the last loose end. You're not a loose end anymore. You're a witness, the only living person who heard him confess. Rains's tone shifted. Which means you're testifying, federal grand jury, full protection detail until trial. The convoy merged onto the highway, heading back toward Denver. Sarah watched the city skyline grow closer and felt nothing. No relief, no safety. Just a hollow exhaustion that went deeper than bone. Her phone buzzed again. Jennifer. Sarah? Oh, thank God. Where are you? Are you okay? The hospital's completely locked down. There's armed guards everywhere. And they're saying... Jennifer's voice cracked. They're saying someone tried to kill you. It's complicated. Are you coming back? Sarah thought about St. Vincent's, about the fluorescent lights and the night shifts and the comfortable anonymity of being nobody special, about Marcus Webb's contempt and Patricia Keene's job offer and all the complicated machinery of a life she'd built from nothing. I don't know, she said honestly. Well, whenever you do, you've got a lot of people here who want to buy you coffee. Jennifer's voice steadied. And also apologize for everything, the way we treated you, the way we didn't see... She trailed off. Just come back when you can, okay? Okay. Sarah ended the call. They pulled into a federal building downtown, underground parking, heavy security. Dawson led her through a maze of corridors to a conference room where Agent Vance sat with an ice pack pressed to her head and fury written across her face. You look like hell, Sarah said. Right back at you. Vance gestured to a chair. Sit, before you fall down. Sarah sat. Someone brought more water and a sandwich she couldn't imagine eating. Through the conference room's windows, she could see Denver's downtown core, normal people going about normal days, completely unaware that a decorated general had spent 3 years murdering soldiers to cover up treason. Highland's phone just pinged near Colorado Springs, Vance said, checking her laptop. We've got units converging. He's in a vehicle heading south on I-25. Toward Fort Carson, Sarah said. Or toward the border. Colorado Springs is 2 hours from New Mexico. Vance looked up. He could be running. He's not running. He's going somewhere he feels safe. Sarah thought about Highland's posture in the warehouse, the confidence in his voice. Somewhere with resources. Somewhere he thinks he has leverage. Dawson stepped forward. Fort Carson's his home base, 30 years of connections. People who owe him favors. That's suicide, Vance said. The base is crawling with federal agents right now. Only if he thinks he's lost. Sarah stood despite her legs' protests. But Highland doesn't think he's lost. He thinks I'm dead. He thinks the evidence is contained. He's going back to Fort Carson because that's where his power is. Rains appeared in the doorway, phone pressed to his ear. He listened for a moment, his expression darkening. Highland just entered Fort Carson through the west gate. Security waved him through. Apparently he claimed emergency operational authority. Rains lowered the phone. He's heading toward the command center. He's going for the servers, Sarah said immediately. The evidence, communications logs, financial records, everything FBI found in his office. He's going to wipe it. We've got agents on base. It won't matter. He's a general. He's got clearance, authority, people who'll follow his orders without question. Sarah moved toward the door. You need to lock down that command center now. Rains made the call, his voice sharp and urgent. But Sarah could see it in his face, the same calculation she was making. Even with federal agents on base, even with arrest warrants and evidence, Highland had home field advantage. 3 decades of service, loyal subordinates, the kind of institutional authority that didn't evaporate just because the FBI showed up with accusations. I need to be there, Sarah said. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Absolutely not, Vance said. You're a witness in protective custody. You're not going anywhere near. I'm the only one who heard him confess. The only one who can testify to what he said in that warehouse. Sarah's voice cut through objections. And if he wipes those servers, if he destroys the physical evidence, my testimony is all you'll have. Which means you need me alive and credible. Which means you need me to look him in the eye one more time and prove he didn't win. Rains and Vance exchanged a look. This is a terrible idea, Vance said. Agreed, Rains said. But she's right. If Highland gets to those servers... He didn't finish the sentence. 20 minutes later, Sarah was in a helicopter heading south toward Fort Carson, Dawson and his team packed into the bay around her. Vance sat across from her, still holding the ice pack to her head, looking like she regretted every decision that had led to this moment. For the record, Vance shouted over the rotor noise, this is insane! Sarah didn't disagree. The helicopter descended over Fort Carson's sprawling complex, barracks, training facilities, administrative buildings laid out in precise military order. They touched down on a landing pad near the Central Command building where a cluster of federal agents waited. Highland's inside, one of them reported as Sarah climbed out. 3rd floor, server room. He's got 2 MPs with him, and he's ordered everyone else out. Claims he's conducting a classified security review. How long until he can delete the files? Rains asked via radio. Tech team says maybe 20 minutes if he knows what he's doing. Less if he just wipes everything. They moved toward the building, a small army of federal agents and military operators. But when they reached the main entrance, 4 military police blocked the doorway, weapons not drawn but hands positioned close. Sorry, sir, the lead MP said to Rains. General Highland's orders. No one enters without his authorization. I have federal arrest warrants, Vance said, holding up documentation. Yes, ma'am. But this is a military installation. Command authority supersedes civilian law enforcement unless there's an imminent threat to national security, Sarah interrupted. Everyone turned to look at her. Which there is. General Highland is actively destroying evidence of treason and espionage. Every second you delay is another file deleted, another piece of proof gone. The MP's expression flickered. Ma'am, I can't just... What's your name? Sarah asked. Corporal Davies. How long have you served under General Highland, Corporal Davies? 3 years, ma'am. And in those 3 years, did he ever strike you as someone who'd sell out American soldiers for money? Sarah stepped closer. Because that's what he did. He leaked classified convoy routes to enemy forces. People died. My unit died. And he's been covering it up by murdering anyone who got too close to the truth. Davies's jaw tightened. Behind him, the other MPs shifted uncomfortably. I'm one of the survivors, Sarah continued. I was there in Kandahar when the IED hit. I held my team together for 4 hours while Highland's buyers closed in. I earned this. She pulled up her sleeve, showing the scar tissue. And I earned the right to look him in the eye when he goes down. Silence stretched across the entrance. Then Davies stepped aside. 3rd floor, he said quietly. Server room at the end of the hall. They moved inside, Dawson's team taking point, weapons ready. The building was eerily quiet. Highland had cleared it efficiently. They climbed the stairs, boots echoing in the empty stairwell. 3rd floor. Long corridor with fluorescent lights and that particular smell of government buildings everywhere. The server room door stood at the far end, heavy and reinforced, locked. Highland, Vance called out. FBI, open the door. No response. General Highland, this is Colonel Rains. Stand down. You're under arrest. Still nothing. Dawson checked the door. Reinforced. We can breach it, but it'll take time. Which we don't have. Sarah moved forward. Let me try. She knocked. Calm. Professional. General? It's Corporal Mitchell. We need to talk. A moment of silence. Then the lock clicked. The door opened 6 inches. Highland stood there, his uniform still perfect, his expression unreadable. Behind him, computer screens glowed with scrolling data. You're supposed to be dead, he said. I'm hard to kill. You should have learned that in Kandahar. Highland's mouth twitched. Might have been a smile. You really should have stayed invisible, Corporal. Should have kept your head down, lived your quiet little life. But you had to play hero one more time. Someone had to. You certainly weren't going to. His expression hardened. You have no idea what you've cost us. The asset we were extracting from Kandahar had intelligence that could have prevented 3 separate terrorist attacks, saved thousands of lives. But the operation was compromised, and he died, and all that intelligence died with him. Because you sold us out. Because someone on my team was dirty. Highland's voice rose for the first time. I spent 18 months setting up that extraction, risked everything, and someone betrayed it. So yes, I've been hunting the mole, eliminating possibilities, doing what needed to be done to protect national security. You murdered American soldiers. I eliminated security threats. You're insane. I'm a patriot. Highland pulled the door open wider. Behind him, one of the MPs stood with a weapon drawn. And I'm not going down for doing my job. Your job doesn't include treason, Vance said from behind Sarah. Highland's laugh was bitter. You want to talk about treason? I've given 32 years to this country. I've run operations you'll never hear about that saved lives you'll never know existed. And now you're going to arrest me because I got my hands dirty doing the work you're all too squeamish to do yourselves? We're going to arrest you because you murdered people to cover up your mistakes, Sarah said. There's a difference. No, there really isn't. Highland stepped back, hand moving toward something on the desk. But I'm not going to prison, and I'm not going to let you destroy everything I built. The files are already backed up, Vance said quickly. FBI has copies. You can delete all you want. It won't matter. Highland froze. His hand hovered over what Sarah now saw was a pistol lying next to the keyboard. You're lying, he said. Am I? Vance pulled out her phone, showed him the screen. We've had your office under surveillance for 3 days. Every file you accessed, we copied. Every communication, we recorded. It's over, General. For a long moment, Highland just stared at the phone. Then his hand moved toward the weapon. Dawson was faster. His rifle snapped up. Don't! Highland's hand stopped. His breathing came quick and shallow now, the perfect military bearing finally cracking. It's over, Sarah said quietly. Put your hands up. Come out. Face what you've done. Face what? Highland's voice broke. A show trial? Media circus? Watching everything I built get torn apart by people who never had to make the choices I made? He shook his head. I'd rather die. Then you'd be taking the coward's way out. Sarah stepped closer despite Dawson's warning gesture. You want to die a patriot? Fine, but you're not. You're a murderer who got caught, and you're going to stand trial and answer for every single life you destroyed. Commander Bricks, Sergeant Torres, Specialist Reeves, all of them. You're going to say their names out loud and admit what you did. Highland's hand trembled over the pistol. The entire hallway held its breath. Then his shoulders sagged. His hand dropped, and slowly, carefully, he raised both hands above his head. I want my lawyer, he said. Federal agents swarmed in, securing Highland, clearing the room, securing the equipment. The MP who'd been with him surrendered his weapon without resistance, face pale and shocked. Sarah stepped back, letting them work. Her leg finally gave out completely and she sat down hard on the floor, back against the wall. Dawson crouched next to her. You okay? Ask me tomorrow. They watched as agents led Highland out in handcuffs. He walked with his spine straight, chin up, maintaining that military bearing even as his career and life crumbled around him. When he passed Sarah, he stopped. You should have died in Kandahar, he said quietly. But I didn't. That's the thing about survivors, General. We're inconvenient. They took him away. The aftermath unfolded over hours. FBI seized every computer in the server room. Military investigators descended on Fort Carson. The base went into lockdown while they sorted through 3 decades of Highland's career, looking for more bodies, more betrayals, more damage. Sarah gave her statement in a conference room that looked identical to every other military conference room she'd ever seen. Bland walls, bad coffee, fluorescent lights that made everyone look tired and old. Rain sat across from her, recording everything. "How long had you suspected General Highland?" he asked. "I didn't. Not until he told me himself in the warehouse." Sarah rubbed her eyes. "But looking back, there were things. The way he pushed for our convoy route instead of the alternate. The way he insisted on specific timing. Small things that didn't register as suspicious at the time. You couldn't have known." "I should have." "No." Rains leaned forward. "Highland was good at this. He'd been selling secrets for 5 years before Kandahar. We found evidence of at least 7 other operations he compromised. You had no way to know." Sarah didn't respond. Survivor's guilt was a funny thing. It didn't care about logic. Her phone buzzed. Patricia Keene. "Miss Mitchell, I'm glad you're safe." "Thank you. I'm calling about our conversation this morning, the position I offered." Keene paused. "Given everything that's happened, I understand if you need time to consider, but the offer stands. We'd be fortunate to have you." Sarah looked around the conference room. At Dawson and his team cleaning weapons in the corner. At Vance with her ice pack and her federal credentials. At Rains with his recorder and his questions. She thought about St. Vincent's, about Jennifer's worried voice and the patients she'd treated and the quiet anonymity she'd built so carefully. "Can I ask you something?" Sarah said. "Of course." "This morning, before everything went sideways, you said I was wasting my skills by hiding. What did you mean?" Keene was quiet for a moment. "I meant that the world needs people who can stay calm when everything's falling apart. Who can make hard decisions under pressure. Who can save lives when no one else knows how." She paused. "You spent 3 years trying to be invisible because you were tired of being that person. I understand that. But Mitchell, that person is who you are. And we need you." Sarah closed her eyes. "I'll think about it. That's all I ask." The call ended. Evening came. They moved Sarah to a hotel near the federal building, full security detail, agents posted outside her door. She showered for the first time in 24 hours, watching blood and dirt swirl down the drain. When she emerged, Dawson was waiting with takeout food and an update. "Highland's being held in a secure facility. No bail. Trial's scheduled for 6 months from now." He handed her a container of Chinese food. "You'll be the prosecution's star witness." "Lucky me. Commander Hayes wanted me to tell you something." Dawson sat across from her, his own food untouched. "He said to remind you that you saved his life twice now. Once in Kandahar, once at St. Vincent's. He said, if you ever need anything, you call." Sarah poked at her food. "Tell him thanks. Tell him yourself. He's being transferred to Walter Reed for surgery in a few days. Wants you to visit." They ate in comfortable silence. Outside the hotel window, Denver glowed with evening lights, the city going about its business, unaware that a military general had just been arrested for treason. "What happens now?" Sarah asked finally. "Now you testify, help put Highland away for life. Then," Dawson shrugged, "then you figure out what comes next. Go back to nursing, take the FBI's offer, join a private security firm. Whatever you want." "What if I don't know what I want?" "Then you take your time figuring it out." Dawson stood, collecting empty containers. "But Mitchell, for what it's worth, you're good at this. The crisis management, the life-saving, the not dying when people try to kill you thing. World needs people who are good at that." He left her alone. Sarah sat in the hotel room, staring at nothing. Her phone sat on the bedside table, silent now. No calls, no threats, just quiet. She picked it up, scrolled through contacts. Jennifer, Patricia Keene, Agent Vance, Colonel Rains, Commander Hayes. All these people who'd somehow become part of her life in the space of one impossible day. 3 years ago, she'd walked away from the military because she couldn't handle being that person anymore. Couldn't handle the weight of keeping people alive, of making life or death decisions, of being someone others depended on when everything went wrong. But today, she'd done all of that anyway. Had saved Commander Hayes. had survived multiple attempts on her life, had looked a corrupt general in the eye and helped bring him down, and she was still standing. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Against her better judgment, she answered, "Mitchell, Corporal." The voice was female, professional, unfamiliar. "My name is Director Rachel Winters. I run a specialized division within Homeland Security. We handle sensitive operations that require unique skill sets." Sarah's stomach tightened. "I'm not interested in recruitment calls." "This isn't a recruitment call, it's an invitation." A pause. General Highland wasn't working alone. We've identified at least 3 other high-ranking officers who were part of his network. They're still out there, still active, still selling secrets. Then arrest them. We can't. Not yet. We need proof. And these people are careful. They've learned from Highland's mistakes. Winter's voice dropped. We need someone who can get close, someone with military credibility and medical skills, someone they'd never suspect. You want me to go undercover? I want you to finish what you started. Take down the whole network. Make sure no one else dies because another general decided patriotism includes selling out their own soldiers. Sarah closed her eyes. And if I say no? Then we'll find someone else. But they won't be as good as you, and more people will die while we train them up. Winters let that hang. Think about it. I'll call back in 48 hours. The line went dead. Sarah sat in the silence, her mind spinning. 3 years of hiding. 3 years of trying to be nobody special. And in one day, all of it had fallen apart. The quiet nurse persona was gone. Everyone knew who she was now, what she could do. There was no going back to invisible, but maybe that was okay. Maybe she'd never really wanted to be invisible anyway. She picked up her phone and dialed. Patricia Keene answered on the second ring. "Ms. Mitchell?" "I'll take the position," Sarah said. "Lead Trauma Response Coordinator. When do I start?" She could hear Keene smile through the phone. "Monday morning. Welcome back, Mitchell." Sarah ended the call and lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere in a secure facility, General Highland sat in a cell awaiting trial. Somewhere in Washington, Director Winters waited for an answer to her question. Somewhere in Denver, St. Vincent's Medical Center carried on with the business of saving lives. And somewhere in between all of that, Sarah Mitchell had to figure out who she was going to be. The decorated veteran? The trauma coordinator? The undercover operative? Or maybe just someone trying to do the right thing when everything went wrong. Her phone buzzed one more time. Text message from a blocked number. "Your convoy wasn't the only one. Find the others. They're still hunting survivors." W. Sarah stared at the message, her blood going cold. She thought about Director Winters' words. 3 other officers. Still active. Still selling secrets. She thought about this question Highland had asked in the warehouse. What do you remember about the objective? And she realized with sick certainty that this wasn't over. Not even close. Sarah stared at the message until her vision blurred. "Your convoy wasn't the only one. Find the others. They're still hunting survivors." She screenshot it, forwarded it to Vance, then called her immediately. "Please tell me you're seeing this," Sarah said when Vance answered. "Looking at it now. Any idea who W is?" "No. But they know about other convoys, other survivors." Sarah paced the hotel room, her legs screaming, but adrenaline overriding the pain. Highland said the Kandahar extraction went wrong because someone leaked it. What if there were other extractions, other operations that got compromised? Vance was quiet for a moment. "I'll run it up the chain, see what we can dig up from classified OP records." A pause. "Mitchell, you need to rest. You've been running for 24 hours straight. I'll rest when this is finished." "It is finished. Highland's in custody. The immediate threat is over." "Is it?" Sarah stopped at the window, staring out at Denver's night skyline. "Because someone just sent me an encrypted warning suggesting there are more survivors being hunted, and you said yourself Highland wasn't working alone." Vance sighed. "Stay in the hotel. I'll make some calls." The line went dead. Sarah sat on the bed, her body finally registering exhaustion. Every muscle ached, her head throbbed. The scar tissue on her leg felt like someone had taken a blowtorch to it, but her mind wouldn't stop. She pulled up her laptop, the hotel had provided one for federal witnesses, and started searching. Military convoy attacks in Afghanistan over the past 5 years. Casualties. Survival rates. Patterns. 3 hours later, she'd found 6 other incidents that matched Kandahar's profile. Medical or supply convoys hit by coordinated IED attacks with follow-up enemy engagement. High casualties. Suspiciously accurate enemy intelligence. All 6 had been under General Hyland's operational authority. Her phone rang at 2:37 a.m. Vance. "You need to see this. I'm sending a car." 20 minutes later, Sarah was back in the federal building, following Vance through empty corridors to a secure conference room. Inside, Colonel Rain sat with 3 other people Sarah didn't recognize, 2 in military uniforms, 1 in a suit. 2 in military. "Corporal Mitchell," Rains said. "This is Colonel Amanda Price, Army Intelligence, Major David Ochoa, Special Investigations, and Deputy Director Frank Garrison, NSA. Sarah nodded to each of them, her stomach tight. "We ran the analysis you suggested," Price said, pulling up a presentation on the wall screen. "Cross-referenced convoy attacks under General Hyland's command with known intelligence compromises. You were right, 6 other operations showed signs of leaked information. The screen filled with data, dates, locations, casualty reports. Combined with Kandahar, that's 7 major security breaches over 4 years," Price continued, "resulting in 43 American deaths and compromised intelligence operations valued at over $2 billion in strategic assets." Sarah felt sick. Were there other survivors? People like me who Hyland might have targeted? 18 survivors total across all 7 incidents. Ochoa pulled up another screen. Of those, 11 are confirmed dead from various causes over the past 3 years. 2 more are missing. That leaves 5 still alive. "Including you," Garrison added, his voice gravelly from too many years and too many cigarettes. "And Commander Hayes, who's currently in surgery at Walter Reed under heavy guard." "What about the other 3? Sarah asked. Price highlighted names on the screen. Staff Sergeant Marcus Lang, stationed in Germany. Specialist Rachel Kimura, discharged and living in Seattle. And Petty Officer First Class James Rivera, Navy, currently deployed on the USS Lincoln in the Pacific. "We're moving protection details to all of them immediately," Rain said. "But we need to figure out who's still operational in Hyland's network. The general's been isolated since arrest. No phone calls, no visitors except his lawyer. But someone sent you that warning, someone who knows what's happening." "W?" Sarah said. "Any idea who that could be?" They all shook their heads. Garrison leaned forward. "NSA's been running signals intelligence on everyone in Hyland's chain of command. We've flagged 3 officers with suspicious financial activity and communications patterns." He pulled up photos. Colonel William Thatcher, Finance Corps, Major Sandra Wolfe, Intelligence, and Lieutenant Colonel Robert Wade, Special Operations Command. Sarah studied the images. None of them looked familiar. "Wolfe and Wade both have W initials," Vance pointed out. "Could be either of them." "Or someone we haven't identified yet," Price said. Hyland was careful. His network was compartmentalized. Each person only knew their piece. "So what's the play?" Sarah asked. Rain stood, moving to the screen. "We bring in all 3 suspects for questioning. See who breaks. Meanwhile, we keep you and the other survivors under protection until we're certain the threat is neutralized. That could take months." "Better than being dead." Sarah thought about the text message, the urgency in those few words. Whoever sent that warning thinks survivors are in immediate danger, not theoretical future risk. Now. "We're doing everything we can." "It's not enough." Sarah stood despite her exhausted body's protests. If someone in Hyland's network knows he's been arrested, they're going to move fast, cover their tracks, eliminate anyone who might connect them to his crimes. That means the survivors have maybe days, not months. "What do you propose?" Garrison asked. Sarah looked at each of them. "Use me as bait." The room erupted in objections. "Absolutely not. You're a witness, not an operative. The risk is completely unacceptable." Sarah waited until they ran out of steam. "I'm already a target. They've tried to kill me 3 times in the last day, so let's use that. Put me somewhere visible, somewhere the network will hear about. And when they make their move, we grab them." "You're talking about making yourself a target," Vance said. "Again, after barely surviving the last time. I'm talking about finishing this." Sarah's voice hardened. "Every hour we wait is another hour those other survivors are at risk. Lang, Kimura, Rivera, They don't even know they're being hunted. At least I know what I'm walking into. Raines and Price exchanged looks. It could work, Price said slowly. If we controlled the environment, full surveillance, tactical support, extraction protocols. And if it goes wrong, Vance demanded, then we adapt. Sarah met her eyes. Like I've been doing for the last 24 hours. The silence stretched. Finally, Garrison nodded. I'll authorize NSA support, full signals intelligence, real-time monitoring. He looked at Sarah. But you follow the plan exactly. No improvisation. No heroics. Wouldn't dream of it, Sarah said. They spent the next 3 hours building the operation. Sarah would return to St. Vincent's Medical Center publicly, resuming her duties in a highly visible role. Federal agents would pose as hospital staff, security, patients. The building would be wired with surveillance, and they'd leak her location through channels known to be compromised. Then they'd wait for someone to take the bait. We go live tomorrow morning, Raines said. That gives us time to position assets and brief the hospital administration. Patricia Keene was not thrilled. You want to use my hospital as bait in a federal sting operation? She sat across from Sarah and Vance in her office, her expression carved from ice. Do you understand the liability exposure, the risk to patients and staff? We understand completely, Vance said, which is why we're taking every precaution. Federal agents embedded throughout the facility. Tactical teams on standby. The operation will be invisible to everyone except the targets. And if something goes wrong, if there's a shootout in my emergency department, then we evacuate and contain, Raines said via speakerphone. But we don't believe it'll come to that. These people are professionals. They'll try to isolate Mitchell quietly, make it look like an accident. Keene looked at Sarah. And you're volunteering for this? I am. Why? Sarah thought about Torres and Reeves and Commander Bricks, about 18 survivors whittled down to 5. About families who'd been told their soldiers died in combat when really they'd been murdered to protect traitors. Because it's the right thing to do, she said simply. Keene studied her for a long moment. Then she nodded. Okay, but I want operational control over patient safety. If I say evacuate, we evacuate. No arguments. Agreed, Vance said. They shook on it. Sarah returned to St. Vincent's at 6 a.m. the next morning, walking through the ER entrance like she'd done 1,000 times before. Except this time, federal agents watched from surveillance vans. Tactical operators waited in unmarked vehicles, and NSA monitored every communication within a 3-block radius. Jennifer nearly dropped her coffee when she saw Sarah. You're back. Already? I thought... She stopped, taking in Sarah's appearance. The fresh bandages on her leg, the exhaustion carved into her face. Are you okay? I'm fine. Ready to work. Sarah, you were almost killed yesterday, multiple times. Maybe you should take some time. I've had enough time. Sarah pulled on a fresh pair of scrubs, wincing as the fabric pulled against her injuries. What's the patient load looking like? Jennifer stared at her like she'd grown a second head, but eventually she just shook her head and pulled up the board. Moderate. 3 in triage, 2 waiting for beds upstairs, 1 GSW in trauma 2. I'll take the GSW. Sarah moved through her shift with practiced efficiency, treating patients, directing staff, falling back into the rhythm she knew. But part of her mind stayed alert, watching for anything unusual, anyone out of place. The federal agents were good. She could barely spot them. A patient in Bay 6 who never seemed to get discharged. A janitor who spent a lot of time near the medication room. A visitor who'd been reading the same magazine for 3 hours. Lunch came and went. Afternoon stretched into evening. Nothing happened. Sarah started to wonder if they'd miscalculated. Maybe whoever was hunting survivors had already gone to ground. Maybe the bait wasn't attractive enough. Then at 7:23 p.m., her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Parking garage, level 3. Alone. I have information about the network. W. Sarah's pulse quickened. She forwarded it to Vance, then typed back, How do I know you're real? The response came immediately. Because I'm the one who warned you, and because Major Sandra Wolf just bought a one-way ticket to Buenos Aires. She's running. If you want answers, meet me. 10 minutes. Sarah showed the message to the undercover agent posing as a janitor. He spoke quietly into his radio, then nodded. Teams are moving into position. We'll have the garage surrounded. But Mitchell, be careful. Sarah headed for the elevators, her heart pounding. This was it. Either they'd catch whoever was behind the survivors' deaths, or this was a trap that would end with her in a body bag. The parking garage was dim and concrete, the fluorescent lights casting harsh shadows. Sarah's footsteps echoed as she moved toward level 3, every sense alert. A figure stood near a support column. Male, maybe 50, wearing civilian clothes. As Sarah got closer, she recognized him from the photos. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Wade. Corporal Mitchell. His voice was calm, professional. Thank you for coming. You sent the warnings. I did. Wade moved into better light, keeping his hands visible. I've been embedded in Highland's network for 16 months. Deep cover operation authorized by Army intelligence to identify the full scope of his treason. You're undercover? Was, until Highland got arrested and everything accelerated. Wade pulled out a phone, showed her a screen. Major Wolf just liquidated her offshore accounts. She knows it's over, and she's not going quietly. Where is she now? That's why I brought you here. Wade gestured toward a vehicle parked nearby. She's planning to eliminate the remaining survivors before she runs, starting with Staff Sergeant Lang in Germany. I intercepted her communications. She's got contractors moving on him in the next 2 hours. Sarah's blood went cold. We need to warn him. Already done. German authorities are moving him to protective custody, but Wolf's got contingencies, other targets. She's desperate. Wade's expression hardened. I need you to help me bring her in. She trusts me. Thinks I'm still loyal to the network. If you and I approach her together, claiming we want to negotiate, that's a terrible plan. It's the only plan that gets her before she disappears into South America with blood on her hands. Sarah studied Wade. Everything about him screamed military professional. But something felt off. The way he'd isolated her in the parking garage. The urgency in his pitch. If you're really undercover, Sarah said slowly, then Army intelligence knows you're here. They're running oversight on your operation. Of course. Then you should know that federal agents have this entire garage surrounded. They've been listening to every word we've said. Sarah took a step back. So either you're telling the truth, and they're about to confirm your identity, or you're lying and they're about to arrest you. Wade's expression didn't change. You're smart. I'll give you that. His hand moved toward his jacket. Don't. The command came from behind Sarah. She turned to see Dawson emerging from behind a vehicle, rifle raised. More operators appeared from strategic positions around the garage. Wade froze. Lieutenant Colonel Robert Wade, Vance's voice echoed from somewhere. FBI, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, and treason. Wade's shoulders slumped. For a moment, Sarah thought he might surrender peacefully. Then he moved. Fast. Faster than someone his age should be able to. His hand came out of his jacket with a compact pistol, firing twice at Dawson. The operator went down. Wade spun, grabbed Sarah, using her as a shield. Back off, Wade shouted, the gun pressed against Sarah's temple. I'll kill her! Operators surrounded them, weapons raised, but nobody fired. Too much risk of hitting Sarah. It's over, Wade, Vance said from behind cover. Let her go. It's not over until I say it's over. Wade dragged Sarah backward toward his vehicle. I've given 30 years to this country, sacrificed everything. And for what? So politicians can give away our advantages to enemies who want us dead? So you sold secrets, Sarah said, her voice steady despite the gun at her head. How's that better? I sold intelligence to allies, people who'd use it to fight the real threats, not waste it on diplomatic nonsense. Wade's voice was fervent, believer's certainty. Highland understood. We were trying to shape the world into something safer, but people like you, people who can't see the bigger picture, you ruined everything. We ruined nothing. You're just a traitor looking for excuses. Wade's grip tightened. Shut up. They reached his vehicle. Wade fumbled with the door handle, trying to keep the gun on Sarah while opening it. For a moment, his attention split. Sarah drove her elbow back into his solar plexus, hard, all the strength she had left. Wade grunted, his grip loosening. Sarah twisted, grabbed his gun hand, forced it up, the weapon discharged, the round going wild. Then Dawson was there, bleeding from his shoulder but very much alive thanks to body armor, tackling Wade to the concrete. Other operators swarmed in. Within seconds, Wade was on his face, hands zip-tied, struggling and shouting about patriotism and duty. Sarah stepped back, her hands shaking now that the adrenaline was crashing. Vance caught her before she fell. "You okay?" Getting really tired of that question, Vance laughed, sharp and slightly hysterical. Fair enough. They watched as agents hauled Wade to his feet and dragged him toward a waiting vehicle. He was still shouting about defending the country, about sacrifices, about how they'd all regret this. "What about Wolf?" Sarah asked. "German authorities arrested her 20 minutes ago," Vance said. "Turns out Wade was right about one thing. She was planning to run. But we had her flagged the moment she bought that ticket." "And Colonel Thatcher?" "Picked up an hour ago at Fort Bragg. Tried to destroy his computer when agents came through the door. We got most of his files anyway." Vance helped Sarah toward the elevator. "It's done, Mitchell. The whole network. Done." Sarah wanted to feel relief, victory, something. Instead, she just felt exhausted. The next 3 days were a blur of statements and debriefings. Sarah recounted everything multiple times for multiple agencies: FBI, Army Intelligence, NSA, Congressional Oversight Committees. Everyone wanted to know details, to understand how deep the corruption went. The media caught wind of it on day 2. By day 3, it was everywhere. Decorated general arrested for treason, military conspiracy exposed, survivors targeted. Sarah's name appeared in headlines. Her photo from her Bronze Star ceremony got circulated online. The quiet anonymity she'd built so carefully was completely, irrevocably destroyed. But this time it didn't feel like a loss. On the 4th day, Sarah visited Commander Hayes at Walter Reed. He was out of surgery, recovering well, sitting up in bed when she arrived. "Raven 2, he said, grinning despite obvious pain. "Heard you saved the world while I was unconscious." "Hardly, just helped arrest some traitors." "Same thing," Hayes gestured to a chair. "Sit. Tell me everything." Sarah sat. Told him about Wade, Wolf, Thatcher. About the operation in the parking garage. About how 18 survivors had been whittled down to 5, and how close they'd all come to being erased. Hayes listened quietly, his expression growing darker. "Torres was a good kid," he said finally. "Reeves, too. They deserved better than dying to cover up someone else's crimes." "Yeah, they did." They sat in silence for a moment. "What happens now?" Hayes asked. "For you, I mean. You going back to nursing?" Sarah thought about St. Vincent's, about Patricia Keene's job offer and Director Winter's recruitment pitch and all the different futures stretching out in front of her. "I don't know yet," she said honestly. "But I'm done hiding, done pretending I'm not good at this." She gestured vaguely at the world. Crisis management, life-saving, the messy, complicated work of keeping people alive when everything's falling apart. "Good," Hayes smiled. "Because the world needs people like you, people who don't quit when things get hard." "I quit the Army. You took a break. There's a difference." He shifted in bed, wincing. "And now you're back. Maybe not in uniform, but still fighting the same fight. Still saving lives. Still being the person other people need when everything goes to hell." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. Permission, maybe. To stop apologizing for who she was. To stop hiding from what she could do. "Thanks, Commander. Call me Hayes. We're not in the field anymore." Sarah smiled. "Thanks, Hayes." She left Walter Reed feeling lighter than she had in years. 2 weeks later, Sarah stood in a federal courthouse watching General Marcus Hyland enter his plea. The courtroom was packed: media, military brass, families of victims, congressional observers. Everyone wanted to see the fallen hero answer for his crimes. Hyland stood at the defense table in his dress uniform, still maintaining that rigid military bearing. But something had broken in him. Sarah could see it in his eyes. "How do you plead?" the judge asked. Hyland's lawyer started to speak, but Hyland cut him off. "Guilty," he said, "on all counts." The courtroom erupted. The judge hammered for order. Sarah watched Hyland's face as they read out each charge: treason, conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, espionage. The list went on and on. 43 deaths and billions in compromised intelligence all laid at his feet. When they finished, the judge looked at Hyland. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" Hyland stood slowly, looked around the courtroom. His eyes found Sarah. "I believed I was protecting this country," he said quietly. "I believed the people I worked with shared that goal." I was wrong, and people died because of my mistakes. He paused. I can't undo what I've done. Can't bring back the soldiers I betrayed, but I can acknowledge the truth. I failed them, failed my oath, failed everything I claimed to stand for. He sat down. The judge sentenced him to life in federal prison without possibility of parole. As they led Highland away in shackles, he passed Sarah's row. Their eyes met for just a moment. Sarah didn't look away. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. Sarah pushed through them without comment, Vance running interference. "How does it feel?" a reporter shouted. "Seeing the general go down?" Sarah stopped, turned. "It feels like justice," she said. "For Commander Bricks, for Torres and Reeves and all the others who died because someone decided their lives were worth less than secrets." She paused. "It feels like maybe their families can have some closure now, some peace. What's next for you?" Sarah thought about the job offer from Patricia Keene, accepted and starting next week, about the ongoing conversations with Director Winters about consulting work, about the 5 survivors, her, Hayes, Lang, Kimura, and Rivera, who'd formed a group chat and were planning a reunion. "Next is getting back to work," she said, "doing what I'm good at, saving lives." She walked away from the cameras. 3 days later, Sarah showed up for her first day as lead trauma response coordinator at St. Vincent's Medical Center. She arrived early, before the day shift, standing in the empty ER and remembering the chaos of 2 weeks ago. So much had changed. Marcus Webb was gone, his medical license under review, his career effectively over. The hospital had issued a formal apology to Sarah and implemented new protocols for staff complaints. And everyone, doctors, nurses, residents, looked at her differently now, not with contempt or dismissal, with respect. Jennifer arrived at 6:45, stopping short when she saw Sarah. "You're early." "Big day. Figured I'd get a head start." Sarah gestured around the ER. "Lots to learn about this coordinator role." "You're going to be great at it." Jennifer set down her bag. "For what it's worth, I'm glad you came back. After everything, you could have gone anywhere, done anything." "I know." Sarah pulled on her badge, new title, new responsibilities, but still the same St. Vincent's ID. "But this is where I'm supposed to be, helping train people to save lives, making sure what happened to my team in Kandahar doesn't happen to anyone else because someone wasn't prepared." The day shift started filtering in. New faces and old. Some looked nervous approaching Sarah, the decorated veteran, the woman who'd taken down a treason network. Others just nodded and got to work. Sarah gathered them for the morning briefing, standing where Marcus Webb used to stand, but bringing something completely different to the space. "Okay, listen up," she said. "I know I'm new to this role, and I know some of you are wondering what changed, why the quiet night nurse is suddenly running trauma response training." She paused, meeting eyes around the room. "Here's the truth. I spent 3 years trying to be invisible because I was tired. Tired of the pressure. Tired of being responsible for life and death. Tired of carrying weight I didn't want anymore." Everyone listened, the ER quiet except for distant monitor beeps. "But I learned something in the last few weeks," Sarah continued. "Being tired doesn't make you less capable. Being broken doesn't make you less valuable. And trying to hide from who you are doesn't make you safer. It just makes you smaller." She gestured around the ER. "This job, emergency medicine, it's hard. It's exhausting. Sometimes it breaks you. But it also saves lives. And that matters more than being comfortable." She pulled up the training schedule on the board. "So here's what we're doing. Everyone in this department is getting recertified in advanced trauma protocols. Not because I think you're bad at your jobs, but because good isn't enough when someone's dying on your table. We're going to drill on chest decompressions, emergency airways, mass casualty response. We're going to be the best trauma team in Colorado. And when things go wrong, because they will, we're going to be ready." A hand went up. One of the residents. "Yes? What if we mess up? What if we're not as good as you?" Sarah smiled. "I mess up all the time. I'm not perfect. Nobody is. But perfect isn't the goal. The goal is being prepared enough, skilled enough, and brave enough to do the right thing when it matters most. Even when you're scared. Even when you're tired. Even when everyone's counting on you and you don't feel ready." She let that sink in. "That's what I'm going to teach you. Not perfection, resilience, The kind that keeps you standing when everything else falls apart. The shift began. Patients came through the doors, the usual mix of trauma and illness and human fragility. Sarah moved between cases, teaching, guiding, showing residents and nurses techniques she'd learned in war zones and brought home. At lunch, Patricia Keene stopped by. "How's the first day?" "Intense." "Good." Sarah accepted a cup of coffee gratefully. "Thank you for this opportunity, for believing I could do it." "I didn't believe you could do it," Keene said. "I knew you could. There's a difference." She paused. "The hospital board wanted me to pass along their gratitude for your service, for your discretion during the federal investigation, for continuing to work here despite everything." "I like it here. Despite everything." "Good. Because we need you." Keene turned to leave, then stopped. "One more thing. Dr. Webb's malpractice review came back. Medical board found evidence of negligence in multiple cases, including Mrs. Patterson. He's facing license suspension and potential criminal charges." Sarah thought about Webb's arrogance, his cruelty, the way he'd made her feel invisible and worthless. She waited for satisfaction, for vindication. Instead, she just felt sad. Sad that it had taken someone dying for people to pay attention. Sad that institutional power had protected him for so long. "I hope he gets help," she said finally. "Whatever happens legally, I hope he figures out how to be a better person." Keene studied her. "That's surprisingly gracious. I'm tired of being angry. Tired of letting people like him take up space in my head." Sarah sipped her coffee. "He lost his career. That's consequence enough. I'm moving forward." The afternoon brought a multi-vehicle collision. 6 patients, 3 critical. The ER exploded into controlled chaos, exactly the kind of mass casualty event Sarah had been training for. She coordinated triage, directing the most critical patients to available trauma bays, deploying staff efficiently, anticipating needs before they became crises. The team moved like a machine, everyone knowing their role, communication sharp and precise. When the last patient was stabilized and moved to surgery, the ER staff collectively exhaled. "That was intense," Jennifer said, stripping off bloody gloves. "That was Tuesday," Sarah replied. "But you all did great. Exactly the kind of response we're training for." One of the residents approached. Coordinator Mitchell. "Just Mitchell is fine." "Mitchell, I wanted to say, the way you ran that response, it was amazing. I've never seen anyone coordinate a mass casualty that smoothly." Sarah thought about Kandahar, about coordinating care for 8 wounded operators while enemy rounds punched through the vehicle's hull, about keeping people alive through sheer determination and skill, learned the hardest possible way. "You'll get there," she said, "with training and experience. Just keep showing up, keep learning, keep trying to be better than you were yesterday." The resident nodded and walked away looking inspired. Jennifer sidled up next to Sarah. "You're good at this. The teaching thing." "I'm trying." "No, you're succeeding." Jennifer smiled. "People are listening to you, respecting you, taking your expertise seriously instead of just seeing—" She gestured vaguely. "The damaged night nurse with the limp?" "Yeah, that." Jennifer's expression turned serious. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For not speaking up sooner. For letting Webb treat you like that. For not seeing how valuable you were until federal agents and military operators showed up to prove it. You apologized already." "I know, but I needed to say it again, because it matters." Jennifer touched Sarah's arm lightly. "You deserved better. From all of us." Sarah felt something tight in her chest loosen a little more. "Thanks. That means something." The shift ended at 7 p.m. Sarah changed out of her scrubs, exhausted but satisfied. Real work, real purpose, no hiding. Her phone buzzed as she headed for the parking lot. Director Winters. "Mitchell, how was your first day?" "Busy. Good. Glad to hear it. Listen, I know you said you needed time to consider our offer, but I wanted to follow up. The operation to dismantle the rest of Highland's network is ongoing. We could use your expertise, short-term consulting, maybe 2 weeks, good pay, limited danger." Sarah stood in the parking lot, watching the sun set over Denver's skyline. 2 weeks ago, she would have said no automatically, would have protected her quiet life, her safe routine, her comfortable invisibility. But she wasn't that person anymore. "What would the job entail?" she asked. Interviewing survivors from the other compromised operations, getting details Highland and his network tried to bury. You speak their language, combat veteran, trauma survivor. They'll trust you in ways they won't trust us. Sarah thought about Lang, Kimura, and Rivera, about the shared experience of surviving something that should have killed you, about the bond that formed between people who'd faced the worst and somehow come through. "I'll do it," she said, "but on one condition." "Name it." "The survivors get full support, therapy, medical care, job placement assistance, whatever they need to rebuild their lives. This isn't just about getting intelligence. These are people who've suffered enough." Winters was quiet for a moment. "Agreed. We'll set up a comprehensive survivor support program. You have my word." "Then I'm in." They arranged details. Sarah would start the consulting work in 2 weeks, giving her time to settle into the coordinator role first. It felt right, balancing both lives, the one saving patients in the ER, the one helping survivors find justice. She drove home to her small apartment in Capitol Hill. It was the same place she'd lived for 18 months, but it felt different now. Less like a hiding place, more like a launching point. Her phone showed missed calls from news outlets, interview requests, people wanting her story. She deleted them all. The story wasn't about her. It was about Torres and Reeves and Bricks and all the others who deserved to be remembered. Instead, she opened the group chat with the other 4 survivors. Lang had sent a photo from Germany, him with military police, giving a thumbs up. Caption: "Still alive, thanks for the warning." Kimura had posted from Seattle, "Started therapy today. Actually helpful. Who knew?" Rivera checked in from the Pacific. "Brass finally told us what really happened. Thank you for fighting for us." Hayes sent a selfie from his hospital bed. "Getting discharged tomorrow. First round's on me when we all meet up." Sarah smiled and typed, "Stay safe, everyone. We made it. That's what matters." She set down her phone and looked around her apartment. Tomorrow she'd go back to St. Vincent's, continue training the team, save more lives, do the work that mattered. And in 2 weeks she'd help other survivors find their way forward. Not as Raven 2, the combat medic who'd earned a Bronze Star in Kandahar, not as the quiet night nurse who'd been invisible for 3 years. Just as Sarah Mitchell, someone who'd been broken and put herself back together, someone who'd been dismissed and proven them wrong, someone who'd survived the worst and decided to use it for something good. She thought about Marcus Webb, who'd treated her like she was worthless. She thought about General Highland, who'd tried to have her killed. She thought about everyone who'd underestimated her, dismissed her, tried to make her small. And she smiled, because they'd been wrong. All of them. She wasn't fragile, wasn't damaged, wasn't weak. She was a survivor, a warrior, someone who stayed standing when everything else fell apart. And that was enough. More than enough. Sarah pulled out her laptop and started drafting the new trauma response training curriculum. There was work to do, lives to save, people to teach. The world didn't stop needing people who could stay calm in chaos, who could make impossible decisions under pressure, who could carry weight that would break others. And Sarah was done pretending she wasn't one of them. She'd spent 3 years trying to be invisible. Now she was done hiding. The quiet nurse who everyone ignored had become someone they'd never forget. The woman they'd dismissed had proven herself indispensable. The veteran they'd pitied had reminded them what strength really looked like. And somewhere in a federal prison, General Marcus Highland would spend the rest of his life remembering that the person he'd underestimated most had been the one to bring him down. Sarah worked late into the night, building something that mattered, using everything she'd learned in the hardest possible ways. And for the first time in 3 years, she felt like she was exactly where she belonged. Doing exactly what she was meant to do, being exactly who she was. No apologies, no hiding, just Sarah Mitchell, moving forward, one saved life at a time.